Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G. Sitting with me is Mr. Elric Kane.
I'm still here, Rob.
You're still here.
I'm still. You pushed me as far as it could, but I'm still here.
Where did I push you?
I don't know. You pushed me on your table.
Deep,
we are
to the deep
end.
end.
The deep end of horror.
You already ruined it.
You pushed me over the edge into the deep end of horror.
I thought you said you were going to say it every week, and you already
I just
forgot.
did.
You already
I just said it
fucked
3
it up,
times.
Elric.
I reminded you.
I don't know if you did remind.
I did. Anyways, so that's Elric Kane, our host that does remember stuff, Rebekah McKendry.
Hi.
That's
I don't know.
debatable.
I'm a little frazzled this week. I'm not so sure about that.
We'll see. Yeah, we had a long week full of events.
Yeah.
So many events. So why don't we just dive in, because we all got to see. There's the Cinefamily, aka formerly the Silent Movie Theater here in Los Angeles. I don't know. Is it for this month or 2 months?
It's
I think
2 months because they're extending it. Like they're doing the HAXAN showing again, and I think they're adding some more titles
Suspiria,
as well.
2 months of witch movies, witch horror at the Cinefamily.
I think because
now.
people are going. These are the kind of theaters that put out a program, and if 5 people come, they can't afford to keep playing those kind of movies. So if they pack out a house for something, it makes sense to keep doing it.
It's because they're running Teen Witch.
Teen Witch.
I'm totally sure.
Oh crap! I forgot.
Totally sure of it. This Saturday night, we're going to see Teen Witch.
Yeah,
I am not.
And Elric is not joining us for that.
I'm
but
abstaining.
whatever. He doesn't understand the power of Robin Lively. That's
You don't
totally
get
fine.
it. It's a musical too. You don't know what you're
See,
missing.
That's the part that makes me second guess it.
Oh, no.
Stop mentioning
You
the
will
musical
love it.
part.
You will
I've
love
seen
it.
It used to be an HBO staple, but I
Yeah.
prefer Teen Wolf. What can I say? Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about what we've seen. I know you guys saw a movie together, so I'm just going to shoot mine out really quick, which was HAXAN, Witchcraft Through the Ages. Rebekah wrote a giant piece on this for Blumhouse.com, which I kind of linked back to. I didn't want to just repeat your description of it, but essentially it's a movie from 1922 by a guy named Benjamin Christensen.
Scandinavian, right?
Is that what he is?
It is somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly which country.
And it is one of the most bizarre films that has ever been made, and I think more so because if you really put into context the time period, like this is very early in the history of film.
Nothing before and nothing after, anywhere close to it.
Quite like it, no. And Criterion put out a DVD of it. There's 2 versions. There's a 78-minute version. I don't know what the differences are. That one has, I believe, narration by William S. Burroughs on the Criterion edition. Yeah. And then the full cut of it is an 86, 87-minute version, which has a recreated score, at least on the DVD, of whatever the original Danish score was.
Was it screened off a DVD or screened on film?
I couldn't tell. I honestly couldn't tell. I mean, it looked like it could have been either or, because I don't know how good the elements were. And this is a movie that I'd never seen in its entirety. I've only caught bits of it.
I've still only seen clips.
Yeah, because it's usually Sean Keller, who's a friend of our shows, and this is his Halloween season movie. Mm-hmm. It's usually always on during the month of October in the background at his place. So I've caught bits, but it's like the nightmare fuel that like I have never seen a more terrifying version of the devil than portrayed in this 1922 version, which is also played by the director, the devil in it. And there's witches, there's people kissing his butt. But what was cool about it was there was an artist named White Magic that performed a live score to it. So got to see it that way. It was really mesmerizing and kind of like I felt like I was on drugs, even though I wasn't at all. Mm-hmm. It just had that very weird euphoric kind of feel to it. And hearing kind of like this eerie, dare I say, banshee-like vocal kind of going the whole time with like subtle music, really added to it. It was just a really weird
and it's
experience.
Playing again, so hopefully by the time people hear this, there'll be one more showing.
Yeah, it's playing on June 7th, which is after this. So if you're in Los Angeles and you want to see something like you've never seen before, I'd recommend that one.
I'm tempted, I gotta say.
Super cool.
It's a weird movie, and it's even cooler if you look at it in the context, because he didn't make it in the 1920s to preach Christianity or talk about how bad witchcraft or Satanism is. He made it to kind of discuss how legends are born and how witches were persecuted for something that was likely fictionalized.
Right.
And
so
then it was
right around Nosferatu and Vampire by Dreyer. So they're the only other films with that kind of expressionistic hue, I guess.
And coming out of Scandinavia, there was not much. And
I'm sure.
It's just kind of this weird unicorn of cinema.
Yeah,
but
the clips
works.
I've seen have always been like, whoa, how did they pull that off? Like,
It's
weird
really
creatures
extreme and weird creatures. And Christensen, the filmmaker himself, plays both the devil and Jesus,
Yeah,
if
he
I'm
does.
not mistaken.
Yeah, I read that.
So you would liken him to a Darren Lynn Bousman type? Like making both versions?
So Darren Lynn Bousman's remaking HAXAN.
Yeah.
Did I just hear
We
that?
hope.
This is an exclusive, EW, if you're listening.
We'll have to ask Darren. If
We'll
we
get
could-
Darren on that now.
Yeah.
So that was what was the witch movie you guys saw?
We saw Eyes of Fire.
Okay.
I feel like I should talk about it at first only because you've seen it.
I had.
And so I need
you
to
haven't.
express
I haven't either.
how surprised I was by this.
What
because-
is this? I know nothing about it at all.
So I knew nothing, and this is my number one pleasure in life. Like if I have any true pleasure left that has been robbed from me from having children, it is because sex is out the window, being alone's out the window,
Eating dinner,
It's,
gone.
I'm standing up, hovering above other people, but seeing a movie that I don't know anything about on a big screen. Simply one of the greatest
And
things
I have
left
to
online.
cut in and say how passionate Elric is about this because as I was discussing the movie, not even the movie, the box cover with someone else in the lobby while buying popcorn, Elric was like, shush your face.
Physically
Shush your face.
assaulted her.
Yeah. He punched me and then he was
know.
like, shut up, Becca, shut up.
I'm a rough one.
He's intense.
So I stayed away from it. I saw the poster, but what I saw that kind of tipped me in the wrong direction was the still they were using to advertise it looks like kind of a video nasty, like shot on video, like glowing eyes, kind of shitty quality, almost like tracking marks.
Right.
So my brain, it was a movie that was going to be likened to the movies. Who was our Dan Budnick guest? What's the book?
Like the SOB.
Bleeding Skull.
Bleeding Skull book would review. So that's in my brain. I sit down and the movie starts and I literally almost laugh to myself because it's like the total opposite of that. It's like $2.5 million independent. I looked up the budget. Independent film that's like Herzog's Aguirre, The Wrath of God, The Witch, and we'll talk about as we go. We'll talk about the similarities to the new film, The Witch. But with a little bit of Troll 2. It's like imagine The Witch if it also had elements of Troll 2. So it's serious, but then there's these goofy and weird and strange, funny effects and creatures. It was really surprising.
I'd
It is
also
an authentic
say
period piece.
Field in England is like...
Yeah, and I still haven't seen Field in England.
It's got a lot of nods to
But
this.
the authentic, it's like high-end period piece. So you're like, whoa, how is this like a little American indie?
Like a
And
lot of
then-
money spent on this.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's set
Sets.
in the period, the last of the Mohicans period.
French
so,
Revolution.
Yeah, so you've got the French. So it opens with a French. They've kept a girl prisoner who's from America, and you don't know how to get there, and they start recounting story. It had similarities to that film I talked about, Reflecting Skin, in terms of being a very artistically rendered. The guy had a clear vision.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to make this very big movie, but then when the effects are cool too. But like when you cut to the witch things, there's like glowing eyes and explosions, and you're like, what is this movie?
And yeah,
like it's really kind of outrageous.
The witches are made of mud and bugs.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really bizarre and
Blair Witch. Think
Yeah.
about it. It's a haunted forest that they end up going to with a witch in it. And just listen to the setup from IMDb. A preacher accused of adultery cast out of town with followers is then stranded in the forest, haunted by vengeful Indian spirits. It's the exact story of The Witch.
Yeah.
The exact same setup, just slightly different tinker. So my gut now tells me this is the key movie for the guy who made The Witch. Like we need to ask
sure.
Eggers, is this the film you saw? Because there was a lot of overlap, but it was well made for the most part, and it's not a perfect movie to see at 10:30 at night. It's definitely
it's a little slow.
It's the first 50 minutes is a period piece with really not much going on. But you're going to appreciate this more than anyone. My brain lit on fire when I saw their grandfather, who is, and he gets on a boat, and there's this voiceover going, "Grandfather just sat in the chair. He would be the first to die." And then he gets killed with an arrow. Now, who is grandfather? He's the grandfather from Silent Night, Deadly Night. You better run! You better run for your life, boy!
Yeah.
I mean, really, one of my favorite
and he's
cameos
just
in any
sitting
movie.
in the rocking chair at the front of
And
the
he
boat.
looks. I think it's almost the same year. I think
Yeah.
it's this was 84, so it's like 82 maybe is Silent Night.
Wow.
And so it was like looking at the exact same character, just hanging out in
the
a
same
different
pose,
movie.
I love
just
that.
in a boat and colonial.
And the
garb.
best thing
it.
about it is he's the only actor I recognize.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you watch a whole movie and the guy you recognize is Grandpa.
Silent Night, Deadly Night.
But you know what?
Amazing.
I thought it was a really interesting movie. I think everyone who was there could tell why it was an important find.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a film that Cinefamily just kind of stumbled upon a print for like like, what was it, a couple $100
They said it was like a couple $100
and it's a
on
perfect
eBay.
print.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
it's not
it's a
available
movie-
any other way?
No, and it's
No.
on VHS out there. And
Yeah.
this is a film that if they toured or something, it would definitely be worth your time, especially for witchcraft enthusiasts and period piece, you know.
I liked that it's such kind of a cultural melding
Yeah.
because you've got the American colonists, you've got the French who they're battling, you've got the Shawnee Indians, you have the
Or
witch.
spirits, largely spirit,
The
yeah.
spirits, which they never, but they're also scared of the regular Shawnee because there's an attack with them as well. And then you've got the very Puritan town folk, and then you've got the Irish witch. And
That's
it's
right,
just like all of this weird culture melding together in
Yeah.
this one little valley.
And they're talking about how back in the day, the guy who introduced the film, who was actually one of the guests, the programmers who were on our Cinefamily episode
Right.
way back when, the older guy with blonde hair, he mentioned how in the early days of American colonization, they're really scared of the forests, and the woods were not a place of harmony and beauty. They're a place to be fearful of. So I think that context actually was nice for me to think about, thinking back to The Witch, thinking about the woods are a place of dread. So you're just outside, but you don't know what they contain. Whereas that changed a lot. He was talking about, is it Byron? No, who was the poet?
It was Walt Whitman,
who-
or Walden was Thoreau.
Well, Thoreau.
Yeah.
The people who wrote about the woods as this place of adventure, and but this is before that. And it's really atmospheric. But don't take my Troll 2 reference lightly. It's really in there. They have these really bizarre explosions, these weird glowing eyes.
It's the
a
same,
fun,
and I think that it was that kind of effect that everyone loved in the 80s when we need to make something trippy. Let's polarize the film back and
that was
forth
pretty
really
poor,
quick. And so they do that a lot.
That was the worst thing about it, was those
Yeah.
kind of moments. But the effects of the actual makeup were really high end, and they
Cool.
looked really cool.
The
witch
witch
looked cool.
and the ghost. For
Ghosts
the
looked
ghosts,
good,
they
yeah.
were nude. Like they were nude
Yeah.
people painted entirely white with really long hair. It was really trippy because you just see them running from a distance, and it was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
That's
Rob
really
was going to
weird.
come, but he was already tired, and he would have. You've been out in about 15 minutes. He would have been asleep because it had that kind of.
Probably.
It was that perfect pacing to go
Yeah.
to bed to.
Yeah.
But really cool to be able to see these kind of movies that, especially as we have these lists that are dwindling of the films we must still see.
Yeah.
It's nice. So
And
that
I
was a
have
good
to
one.
like the box art for Eyes of
Oh,
Fire
yeah.
was always some of my favorite, even though that it doesn't really explain the film well. It's just gorgeous box art with like
And the
the
poster, too.
trees becoming skeleton arms and grabbing at the girl in the cloak. It's just gorgeous.
So if anyone is friends with Robert Eggers, ask him for us, because I can't imagine that this wasn't like literally top 2 or 3 influences
Movies for
on
him.
him, because
Yeah,
it just
probably.
had too many structural similarities.
All right.
yeah.
So that was a goodie. We both enjoyed going to that one.
Yeah.
I saw. You know what I saw that was cool, and I want to tell people so they do it. The premiere episode of OUTCAST, which is Adam Wingard's directed Robert Kirkman's new show,
Right.
The
Creator of
creator of
Walking
Walking
Dead.
Dead, and this I guess is based on a comic.
It's
that I
on
didn't-
YouTube,
I
right?
think,
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it's original. I don't think it's
Okay,
a comic.
okay, maybe
Pretty
they
sure
meant
it's an original
his
show.
comic. This was put on the first episode only was put on YouTube. It's a 60-minute pilot. I've never watched a full-length thing on YouTube. I usually just watch shorts because I'm always I don't want to see the white interface. But of course, you can make it full screen, and I did. I had heard it was really good. Checked it out. I guess it's going to be on Cinemax in 2 weeks. It launches, so this is a very early chance to watch it. I love the show. This is the most excited I've been about a new show in a while.
Better than the Exorcist show that's coming.
I mean, yeah. And it really is the Exorcist show, so it's really the same kind of story. But what's so cool about it, and I think a lot of people will respect this, is the setting, because it feels like kind of where Wingard started his career. Is I think he's from Alabama or Arkansas. No, he's from Arkansas. It feels like a small town like that. The coolest thing is Patrick Fugit from Almost Famous, who's the young boy, who's a really interesting actor. And lately, as he's become a man, not like a boy, I've like been waiting for him to be in a breakout role. This could be so good for him. He's playing this really disturbed, our age. When he was young, he was possessed with something, and no one really knows what happened. You're getting the story through flashbacks only, so we still don't know everything that happened, but we know he had an awful childhood, and he's come back to the town because his mom's in a mental asylum, and he's living in this house with nothing in it, and he's just totally falling apart. Like, he's total antisocial, doesn't want to be around anyone, and basically finds out that what happened to him is outbreaks are starting to happen in the town to other kids, and he goes with the preacher who helped him, like, absolve his demon. He helps that preacher with one in the pilot episode, and doesn't really know what he can do, but you realize he has some sort of gift. And it is really...
Wow.
Now, the problem with shows like this, and it happened a little bit with Evil Dead, is you hope that if Wingard only directed one, you hope that the rest of the show will be done at that level.
Same quality,
Because he is, I don't even think it's up for grabs. He's probably the most gifted visual filmmaker of that group, of the
wow.
younger groups, I think. In terms
Yeah,
of,
I can't wait to see it now.
and I really loved it. And so it got me really jazzed for what it could be. And at first it's like, is it going to just be an Exorcist show? I clicked you can watch the teaser for the upcoming season, and there's a bigger story. So I was like, when I saw the teaser, I was like, oh yeah, definitely in. Like,
Cool.
That's just the tip of the iceberg of where it's going. And so hopefully for Kirkman, it'd be cool if this was a very different kind of show for him.
Yeah.
So I really liked it. I'm on board, and check it out on YouTube.
Nice.
Cool.
Very cool.
One of the other events I went to earlier this week, actually I hosted, Scream Factory, our friends from Scream Factory, are putting out their first original movie, Fender Bender.
And this was
directed...
fully produced by them? Like,
yeah,
from start to finish?
I want to say, well, yes, it is an original, but it's in conjunction with Chiller Films, and I believe there's one other production company involved.
Becky, you should listen to our episode 2 episode.
Yeah,
the Scream Factory, and you would learn.
I learned so much in that.
Explain
you were
the whole
sleeping.
thing.
No, I was just merely
reiterating
for
those who skipped
produced
episode 2
entirely by them.
Yeah, well, it's their first original movie, and Mark Pavia directed. I love Mark. Mark did a movie called Night Flyer, based on the Stephen King story that a lot of people kind of still. But I think because it's so hard to get now, and people have fond memories of it from the '90s, it's kind of a coveted title.
It's super gory. Like, the effects in it are just awesome.
Yeah, and who's the lead guy in it? It's the guy from
Miguel Ferrer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Miguel
Rebekah.
Ferrer. Yeah, he's great. Yeah, but anyway,
I haven't seen it, but I just know that.
You will see.
I want to
soon.
see it. Yeah.
I don't want to get too into it because obviously we're going to have Mark on the show hopefully in a couple episodes. But this is an interesting film in the sense that I didn't love it, but I liked it enough because it definitely is exactly what it set out to be, which is a love letter to the 80s slasher movies. So, Becca, you will not like it because
I will
that's
not
your
like
bag.
it. That is official.
Elric, you might find it kind of fun. I think that's both its benefit and its unbenefit because by telling a modern slasher story now, but adhering to 80s slasher rules, there were certain things that kind of was like, oh man, I wish that
They didn't quite translate.
It didn't. Yeah, I wish certain things were updated. Whereas it's trying really hard to be part of that time period. However, what I think is exciting is this is debuting exclusively on Chiller on June 3rd.
Oh, so it's a Chiller film. Yeah, that's right.
It's a Chiller film. So what I like about it is it's kind of perfect for that format, meaning that if you watched slasher movies on cable as a kid,
yes.
I think this is a cool movie to just kind of find on Chiller, start watching, and you're kind of like, what is this? And I think, honestly, you could even mistake it for an 80s slasher if they didn't use modern cell phones. That's the only thing. Like, that's the only thing that kind of separates it from those films and now. So I thought it's interesting. I'm curious to hear what people think of it. Again, I think that the best way to see it is when it's on cable because it will feel like those movies that we used to find from back then. But in a couple of weeks we'll talk to Mark all about that. And I mean, he's got an interesting, fascinating history in the business, especially the fact that this is his first movie since Night Flyer, and there's a lot he was doing in between. So we'll get to delve into that with him. Let's see. The other movie I wanted to mention, also again from Scream Factory, they just put out something called I Saw What You Did. From 1965, or the full title, I Saw What You Did, and I Know Who You Are.
Oh.
I love the covering of this. The cover on this one is just gorgeous.
This is a William Castle movie that I'd never seen before. So really fun. Joan Crawford's in it because, of course.
Which was in William's Castle phase. Like, he had his phase where he had gimmicks, like, we're going to throw skeletons or electrocute the audience or whatever he did. But then he did a phase where he's going to have actresses as the gimmick.
Yeah.
So, like... Homicide, was that one?
Homicidal?
Straight Jacket.
Yeah, Straight Jacket, and
of.
this one definitely kind of fall into that.
Yeah,
they're the Joan Crawford years.
Her post whatever happened to Baby Jane years.
Yes.
We're filled with that kind of exploitation stuff.
Right, and this one, I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen it. It's beautiful. It's black and white, and it's such a great. It's an 82-minute movie, so it's nice and tight. And the simple premise is there's these two teenage girls. One of them, one of their parents wants to go out for a dinner date. Babysitter cancels, so she decides to babysit her young sister, but invites her best friend over. And as happens with best friends, they decide, well, we're bored. Let's just do a bunch of phony phone calls. So they're picking up the phone, going through the phone book, just calling people and saying random things like, hello, is Steve in there? Or whatever the case is, just and then make for a goof. But what happens is they call somebody just as he's murdering his wife.
That's awesome, like a Rear Window moment.
Yeah, and it's that at that point where they decide to take it and be a little creepy. They just keep calling random people up and saying, I saw what you did and I know who you are. and then hang up. So they call somebody and say that to a murderer.
Oh,
and
nice.
now it's like the murderer wants to meet them. He's like, well, who is this? And that sort of thing. So it's actually kind of a really fun, quirky thriller
These
in that
concepts
regard.
are so fun.
They're great. They're great. So yeah, what if you phone call a murderer by accident when they just murdered
And we
their
always
wife?
get that question, who would you guys have liked to have interviewed who'd living
know
or
what?
dead? More
William
to think about.
Castle.
William
Castle would have been
Castle.
one of the top
Yeah.
because he just has a way, like Hitchcock when he was marketing Psycho, just that ability to market a film as the film. And it's really not about the movie. It's about his marketing of
Yeah.
the movie.
Yeah.
And that's just that's so fun to me.
His
you know?
book, Step Right Up America, I'm going to scare the pants off you, probably one of the best books on filmmaking.
And there's a good documentary on him too. He's a character.
Oh yeah. And Joe Dante's Matinee is totally.
Oh yeah,
supposed to
one
be
of the
him.
most beautiful.
Yeah.
If you've never seen Matinee by Joe Dante, it's one of the best movies. John
Yeah.
Goodman plays him beautifully.
Did you guys have anything else that you saw this week?
I did. I borrowed one from you, but did you have one?
No, I will plug because we had the Halloween announcement on Monday night, and then Tuesday night. What did I have? Oh, Tuesday
we
night
were
we were
recording
recording a
this-
show, and then I went to see Eyes of Fire. I have done nothing but spend my week with you two. So,
That's fair
But you're
which is
heading
great.
out, but you're leaving us.
But I am
Where can
leaving
people
you.
meet you?
So I am heading to Phoenix Comic-Con on Wednesday of next week, and I will be there for the entire run of the con. I've got like 6 different panels. We're doing a Blumhouse.com panel. I am on the Italian horror panel. I am on the horror music industry panel.
But you have a few copies of a Shockwaves
Yeah,
poster.
I signed a couple Shockwaves
Okay,
posters.
and let's
with
be
the
clear.
gang.
Ken Wiederhorn's Shockwaves, not actually our Shockwaves, but we are signing them anyway. We are taking ownership of your film, Ken, so you better listen and come on the show and defend yourself.
Somebody brought me a whole bunch of Shockwaves posters for
love
Ken
that.
Wiederhorn Shockwaves at Trivia
just
Night
love
last week. By the way, I'm doing Trivia Night while we're in Phoenix. And since we had posters, I was like, I know last year people kept asking for autographs from the crew, so I was like, okay, I'm taking these instead. So if you come by the booth, ask for a Shockwaves poster. I'll see how many I've got.
All signed by all 3 of us.
Yes.
Yeah,
I just
sure.
love that he's become our dream guest,
Yeah,
even though it's
now-
Ken
now-
Wiederhorn.
That is
It's
a
like,
Phoenix Comic-Con exclusive.
You would think
people.
that's
It's gonna
doable.
end up on eBay next week.
We need to save him for like the 50th or 100th.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
some
So
epic.
we're probably going to have to fly him from Florida or somewhere. You know?
We'll do it.
That's okay. We'll do it. He's
We're
still
getting
alive.
it.
At least
We're
that's
getting it.
important. I borrowed from you a Scream Factory title I hadn't seen, and one of those old batshit movies that I usually tend to love. Seeing them on theaters is always different. That's kind of
I remember nothing about this.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen it in the theater again, in a sense, because it's just one of those movies. It's called The Legacy, and if you go to the book, the tagline is The Legacy, the Birthright of Living Death, which I love. I love the full title. This movie's it's like, you know how The Visitor's like bonkers in to me a good way, like that ends up being very entertaining to watch. This film was just like so weird. It opens like with montages of them just frolicking the English countryside, and then this cheesy music that it's direct. Okay, let me put it this way.
But who's in this movie?
Sam Elliott, who sometimes the bar eats you.
Does he have a stash in it?
He has a glorious stash.
Yes.
That is, and no, he's really great in this film. And Catherine Stepford Wives Ross, and she's got a really nice presence. She joins that group of Jessica Harper-esque actresses, Brooke Adams, that have that nice way about them. They're really good. But what I can sum up the problems and pluses of this movie by telling you the director. His name is Richard Marquand, and he directed a movie called Return of the Jedi. If Return of the Jedi has tonal problems, then it's pretty much the same as this movie has. It's like there's some of my favorite parts of all Star Wars in Return of the Jedi, and also some of the worst parts of that franchise in that film. And so this is very similar, where the little bits of horror, and I really think it's like 10% of the movie gets back to the storyline. Most of the movie just like meanders to weird, really weird scenes of people being offed or whatever. But the actual core of the storyline is that 5 guests are being brought to this English country manor. The dying head of this family. Each one of them has a ring, and each one is slowly being killed off. And one of them will inherit the legacy, or the birthright of living death. And Catherine Ross just happens to, she doesn't know she's showing up for this reason. The others are all people who have been bailed out of a murder or something and then lived on. So he had saved their lives, but they had been making a pact with the devil.
Now I remember.
When you see the actual thing, the guy who's running this, he's all messed up. He's probably hundreds of years old, and his face is all fucked up. And it's very interesting. It's got the moment. It's kind of like The Sentinel, where the moments of horror works so well and other moments less so, but Sentinel's just a stronger movie.
Right.
It kind of has that, but the frolicking parts, and then in the middle, there's a sequence that they try to leave the house and they drive in the car and it just keeps going in a loop.
It's like an old dark house movie, though.
It does have that vibe. It's actually really cool. Like, I'm not going to say a bad thing about it as in not see it. You should definitely see it. It just doesn't quite work as a movie. Like, because it forgets its plot 90% of the time. And when it circles back to give you its plot, you're like, oh, that would be... I bet you, I'd put good money on this book would be a great adaptation now. And my guess is the guy took it in quite a different direction, probably from the book.
Right.
I'm trying to think if there's... and the weirdest thing you have to mention is that this is the film that you'll see on the cover. There's a weird white cat is prominently placed.
Right.
Well, there's a
Persian cat.
Persian cat, yeah, beautiful cat. The nurse,
Beautiful cat.
Jenkins.
Beautiful cat.
I believe the nurse's name is Jenkins, as is the white cat. And you realize, like towards the end, the Jenkins is the cat. She keeps turning into the cat,
Right.
and then there's all these other servants of the manor, and you realize they're probably like eternal followers or something of Satan. But there's an earlier scene and I'm going to be truthful, I did not pick this up. I looked at a message board after the movie that said, "What the fuck is this movie about?" And in it, they said there's an early scene where you just saw a room full of cats, and they're like, those people are all probably those cats. And I was like,
right.
oh, of course. So all the cats are you turn into servants to serve you, but they're also cats for the Dark Lord.
Right.
And I'm like, that is a really weird. Like, I don't think of cats as evil personally. I mean, they are evil.
They are.
They're evil little creatures. And
Don't you have a cat? A really nice one named
She's
Lola.
Nice. I find her evil too. But I mean, in Egyptian culture, obviously they're gods. But it was just kind of weird, But there's some really cool gags in it, and Sam Elliott is just total boss.
He's great in it. He's so great.
If you're a Big Lebowski fan, Sam Elliott is the cowboy at the bar with the big mustache, and he has the most misquoted line, and you might not even know this, where he said, "Sometimes you eat the bar, and sometimes the bar eats you." Right? I looked that line up. Believe it or not, he is not saying the word bar.
Oh.
He is saying the word bear. And it is a famous quote, and his accent is so thick that every human who's ever seen Big Lebowski thinks he's saying, "Sometimes you eat the bar, sometimes the bar eats you." It's actually, "Sometimes you eat the bear, and sometimes the bear eats you." And I was like, what?
Wow.
Because I
Bear.
looked it up once, and I found this. I went down to like a little trivia hole.
Yeah.
And because that's an actual quote that's used
pretty
in the
wild.
world. So really weird. You would never know it from listening to it because his accent's so freaking
So,
thick.
now I have to tell my super quick Sam Elliott
Oh,
story.
good.
Uh-oh.
I love
So,
Sam Elliott's story.
When my mom, very first time coming out to Los Angeles, she wanted to do all the touristy stuff. So we were like taking her to like the Hollywood Walk of Fame and all this stuff. And we were like, let's go over to Magnolia Cupcakes, because I was pregnant with Marnie at the time and all I wanted in the world was cupcakes. And so we went over to Magnolia Cupcakes, and Mom is standing in line and she's looking at everything in the counter and all of the different types that they have. And Dave and I are like over looking at a different case, and behind me I hear Mom say, "Oh, excuse me," and then I hear, "You help yourself there, miss." And I'm like, holy shit, I know that voice. And Dave and I turn around, and Mom is standing next to Sam Elliott, who is there ordering a cup of coffee and some
So
banana
cool.
cream pudding. And we were so excited. And right afterwards, we were like, "Mom, do you have any idea who that was?" And she was like, "No, it's just a nice man who I bumped into." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Mom, that was fucking Sam Elliott." He still had the
Yeah.
stash.
He's
So-
funny because I
amazing.
think we all know him kind of old, but seeing him in this movie, he is buff. There's a shower scene where he's fully nude and having a shower, and he's just like, you look at him and go, man, that guy was a dude.
Yeah.
Like, really a dude. Like,
a manly man.
He lived his whole life in that character with the mustache
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
cowboy boots, and very cool.
More
It's a
power
fun,
to him.
fun, weird little movie. They don't make them like that anymore.
No,
I'll tell you
they
that
definitely
much.
do not.
And God bless Shout Factory, Scream Factory. These are the kind of movies where they put them out and you go like, oh, I'm glad I'm getting to see this in such a good way.
Yeah, yeah.
Because rather than shitty
Pristine
DVD or
Blu-ray,
something.
yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I just got the Crush from Scream Factory.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
arrived in the mail
I'm a
today.
fan.
I'm pretty psyched about that one because I
Alicia
really
Silverstone.
liked it when I was in high school. Like, I really thought it was creepy then.
Yeah, I'd
and
like to see that one
I
again.
don't remember
That's
it,
the
so-
movie when Alicia fell in love with me.
Oh, with you. I
with
see.
you.
I imagine.
personally.
That in your mind.
I was watching her. I don't know if she was watching me back.
She was totally watching you.
But
That's how it
I was
worked.
digging
I
it.
see.
And then 30 years later, you bump into
At
her
a-
at a ferry
at a
fair.
ferry fair, yeah.
And she was like,
She
"Oh,
still looked
I
cute to
remember
me.
you."
She looked a little too, she went kind of in that vegan direction.
Yeah, you could
Little
tell.
bit- you could
by
tell
looking-
she's.
How does that
Well, I mean,
mean?
not the good vegan, like living off the land, eating the berries off the land. I don't think she'd had a good meal for a while.
I see.
That's all I'm
You
saying.
can just look at people and say she's vegan.
You can write the vegan hate mail too, or Kane at Twitter because I know it's coming.
It's coming.
Oops.
And you would deserve it. And you would deserve it. One last thing, one last film I want to talk about, but it kind of will segue into this segment that Elric actually suggested. I'm a big soundtrack buff. I love movie soundtracks, and I collect a lot of stuff on vinyl. And Elric at one point thought it'd be fun if I could squeeze in a now spinning segment into our show where I talk about something that I bought this week and kind of play you some samples. So,
or us if we buy one.
Or yeah, exactly.
We can throw it. It'll happen occasionally.
Because that Nocturna album is coming out at some point.
Okay.
So you guys can all listen to some fine vampire disco.
Whatever, Spin Doctors.
No Spin Doctors. So, okay, so I just rewatched a couple of days ago American Movie, the documentary from 1999 with Mark Borchardt, which I hadn't seen in years, but man, I think it's got to be one of the best, most entertaining documentaries I've ever seen in my life.
And inspiring.
Inspiring. No,
he's also one of the most inspiring figures, I think.
I agree with you. And the reason I want to mention it is because my pick of the week is the soundtrack that was just put out on vinyl for his short film Coven, which essentially...
Or Coven.
Because
Coven sounds like oven.
Coven sounds like oven, yeah. It's
Coven. Because oven's a word.
Oven, yeah.
So Mark Borchardt's movie Coven, which is in the movie American Movie, and it's included as a bonus feature on the DVD. Some guy, this company called It's Forever Midnight, who I believe is a podcast.
Oh, wow.
So they've never put anything out. This is their first release, is the Coven soundtrack, which is amazing. And I'm going to show you guys the packaging in a minute. But fantastic packaging. It's a deluxe disc. It's the score by Patrick Nettesheim. I hope I said his name right, which is kind of all over the place. I'm going to play you some samples in a second. But the reason this is fantastic is it's just like the sort of thing I never thought would remotely ever come out this way. But I also want to plug, a lot of people that talk about American Movie don't realize that there's another documentary from 2005 called Horror Business. It was directed by a friend of mine, Chris Garitano.
Awesome.
Really great. It's like, what if you took, Mark is in it again, so it's almost like a semi-sequel, at least to get to see what he's doing next. But he finds 4 more, like, really outskirt filmmakers trying to make horror movies.
The Catharsis guy.
Yeah, Dave Stagneri, who's actually one of the talented ones of the bunch.
Yeah, his film's great.
They're all everybody else is pretty questionable. But the whole moral is, here's 5 guys that have nothing, no connections to Hollywood or anything, and all they want to do is make horror movies. The quality of them is of question, but it's the passion of it. And if you like American Movie, you should check out Horror Business, because I think there's some of the even funnier Mark stuff is in that movie. But anyway,
I wonder if watching it's cathartic, Rob.
It might be.
You know, when since you're teaching now, Elric, when I used to teach at Hunter, and even when I was still doing teaching classes at VCU, I always showed Horror Business. And when I was in New York, I used to have Chris come in and talk to the students about making the documentary and the filmmakers and everything. But it's awesome for film students just because it is so much of like a boots in the mud style.
It's the reality of it, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes like American Movie, you watch somebody really who, what's funny about that is he's very articulate in his idea. It'd be interesting to get him as a guest now on the show. Borchardt, because...
Well, we will. When we were doing Jump Cut, one of the last script readings we had lined up was to fly Borchardt out, and he was going to read an original script. And me and Dick Grunnert had worked it all out, because Dick Grunnert is also from maybe a similar place in Wisconsin, and they had recently met again at a film festival. And Mark Borchardt told him the story, saying, you gave me the highest point in my career, which was because I was going to come out and do that reading. I got my scripts gone through the WGA, and it was the most proud moment of my life. And he thanked Dick for that, and I was like, this is great. And so they're still in touch. And this is the problem with Mark Borchardt, is people watched that movie, and it was a negative for him. Like, American Movie, from all accounts, for him, he really only could see that people were maybe laughing at him, but he needs to understand that, like, there are a lot of people who we laugh at him because it's so familiar and it is funny. But then after that, I show my students all the time. I show them the scene where he goes to an airport and to write in the middle of an airport, like where no one's around and it's cold in Wisconsin. He sits in his car and he goes, man, I come out here, man, because there are no distractions out here. I can sit here. I can write for 7 hours. I'm not even moving to go to the bathroom because this is the only way I'll ever get this stuff done. Yeah. And when I watch things like that, I go, look, that's the ethic we all need to survive, to make it in this field. And so I think he's inspiring, and I love him. I love him. I love his world. And,
what I took away from it is that it's just the timing, like doing everything on 16 mil and trying to shoot it yourself and not being surrounded. Like, his friends were like the actors and helping out. Yeah. And that, like, watching it now, whatever it's been 16 years later, that's what I kept thinking to myself, is like, man, if he was nowadays with the way digital filmmaking and editing on your computer, and if, he could probably put an ad out and find people not that far away that would be, rather than grabbing like in horror business, there's a dude that's in a party scene and he's like, "Hey, dude, let me see your hands. Oh, they're pretty smooth. You should operate camera." It's like, no, listen, Mark, you could do this. Just get an actual cinematographer.
Then there's that
it.
question though, like now because of digital, there's also 10,000 more marks. And because of that, you stand out less. And so by making Coven the way he did, maybe you are making your mark a little more because it was on film. And that's such an interesting thing about timing, you know? And celluloid as this thing that like makes you stand out. I have been hearing that like films still shot on like 16 really do pop when they are submitted to Sundance.
Sure.
Because they get lit. Because when a new camera comes, they all shoot on it.
Yeah.
So you get 100 movies that look the same.
Exactly.
So it's still format wars a little bit are out there, but
right.
I'm excited to see that film with you. You're going to screen it to us.
Yeah.
Real soon.
You and Dick are in it.
I'm
I'm going to play us out with
cool.
3 quick cues from this, and then we're going to go right into Ryan's pick of the week, and then we've got an interview with Mike Flanagan. So stand by.
Yeah, really terrific.
Good
interview.
It's
great
a good
filmmaker.
one.
Here we go. So here's some selections from Coven, the soundtrack. Hello and welcome to this special segment of Shockwaves. Joining us is the Director of Development at Blumhouse, our friend Ryan Turek.
Hello.
Hello. And as we've come to know, at this point, Ryan gives us his pick of the week. So what do you got for us this week, Ryan?
This week I have a very special release.
Uh-oh.
It's called Emily. Now, I don't know where I've talked. I feel like I've talked about this movie on.
You mentioned it on the Blumhouse panel at Monster Palooza a few weeks back.
Yeah, and anybody who needs like kind of like a recommendation. We're at a point now, which is interesting, where it's kind of like, oh, what have you seen? And you go, oh, well, there's not too many theatrical releases, but I've seen a lot on VOD.
Yep.
And there was a weekend that there was nothing to watch. I mean, obviously there was a ton of old stuff I could have dipped into, but I wanted something new. So I kind of scoured iTunes and I just saw this thing called Emily. Mm-hmm. And it had Sarah Bolger's face right on the poster. And I was like, oh, I like that actress. Directed by Michael Thalin. And I just rented it on a whim and we watched it. And it's a really basic premise, which is couple hire a babysitter. Babysitter is going to spend the night, and there's like 3 kids. I think it's 2 sons and a little girl.
Yep.
And immediately things are just off about this girl. Like there's something wrong with Sarah Bolger's character Emily, and they just start doing. She starts allowing the kids to do things, and starts exposing them to things that are very uncomfortable. Until the older son gets the upper hand and is like, I need to change something about what's happening tonight, and it kind of develop, and then it kind of goes into pretty mechanical territory at the end, kind of predictable territory where you're kind of like, okay, this is a standard thriller now, but everything leading up to that is an intense psychological drama.
Yeah.
Of these 3 kids versus this babysitter, and it goes into some very uncomfortable places. It's deeply unsettling. And I don't want to give away too much, but there's this one moment with a hamster that's just like makes your skin crawl.
Yeah. There's a lot of inappropriate things happening.
Yeah,
in front of
inappropriate.
kids.
Yeah, inappropriate is a definite keyword for this movie. But yeah, it's, you know, I mean, like it wears its indie heart in its sleeve, and it goes into some dark places that obviously might have kept it out of the theaters. But in terms of, like, you know, one of those kind of, what's a gem that you saw, you know, in 2016? This would definitely be something. You know, it kind of comes out of nowhere, creeps up on you, kind of punches you in the gut a few times, and then it disappears. You know, and Sarah Bolger's great, and the layers to her character are fantastic, because at first you think it's one thing, and they just keep twisting it along the way until she's fully revealed, and you go, "Oh, that's effed up too. That's super fucked up."
Yeah.
You know,
and they do it in a they don't go overboard in terms of explaining everything.
No.
Like, they just give you all the pieces in an interesting way that you're like, oh, okay, I see where this is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just visual storytelling.
Yeah,
That's all it is.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need her to go, "Oh, this happened to me, and this is why I'm so fucked up." It's just visual storytelling, you know, and I thought that that's what made the director really promising. There's some really great moments in it, great moments. But if Emily is now out on iTunes and VOD and
Blu-ray, it's out on Blu-ray.
It's on Blu-ray now.
Officially.
Dark Sky put it out. That's right.
Yeah, and I wrote about it because when I saw the movie, this is one of those strange movies where, as I was watching it, I was kind of hating it. And it's not that it's not that the movie was poorly made or anything like that, but it's that weird thing about horror where he was showing me things that I'm completely uncomfortable with.
Oh yeah.
And it kept going, like, again, a lot of inappropriate things in front of the kids. And every time they did one of those scenes, I was just like, I hate this movie. I hate this movie. Yeah. But then by the end of it, like, even the final couple shots, it really stuck with me. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? That's a successful horror movie where it makes you face things that you personally are scared of or not comfortable with.
Right.
And then you think about it after, and you're like, all right, so it kind of won me over by the end because of how conflicting it made me feel.
Right. Well,
you know?
I mean, that's what horror needs to do, is be aggressive. I mean, horror works on a wide spectrum of things, but, you know, it could be entertaining, it could be fun, it could be a roller coaster, it could be touching in a way, you know. I mean, like, I find Poltergeist touching at times, you know.
Yeah.
It can be a wide spectrum of things, but one facet that horror can be is just, you know, super messed up and deeply unsettling, and makes you feel like you need to take a shower, you know?
Yeah.
And this is definitely a movie, and I would not recommend watching this movie with your kid, like I attempted to do. Because
this is
it's
an
not
adult movie for adults.
This is a movie for adults. It's not like, oh, hey kids, let's settle down on the couch and watch a scary movie about an evil babysitter. It's not that kind of movie.
No.
This is a really disturbing psychological.
You can go to
horror.
Halloween for that. The original Halloween is the scary babysitter movie you watch with the kids.
Exactly. So, but Emily, definitely check it out. That's one of those little movies that just kind of crept up on you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thanks,
and
man.
Stick around. Here's our next segment. All right, so welcome to the interview portion of episode 4 of Shockwaves. We're very excited to welcome our very special guest, Mr. Mike Flanagan.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. We're very excited.
Yeah,
we're excited.
thrilled you're here. This is
thrilled.
awesome.
Yeah, it was weird because in the old show we talked about you all the time, so it was amazing that never happened. So this is kind of great to kind of usher in the new show with you as a guest. It's really cool.
long
overdue. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah.
I remember we tried to get you during Oculus and the PR person, because we have to go through a PR person if there's
Sometimes.
a big movie. And they were like, we'll see if we can get him. And then I emailed like 6 more times, and it never happened.
But that was
If you're
relativity,
available.
right?
That was.
See, look what happened.
Yeah. They should have let you on.
They should've-
so.
we
We have to be
let it
nice
go.
to relativity somewhat on the show.
Oh,
Because
that's
right.
I
You
have a
do still get a
connection.
paycheck teaching there at the
Oh,
school
you
part.
teach for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So-
yeah, every time I go in there, I actually give them shit about your film.
I
hey,
do
where's
too.
that film now?
No, I'm trying to be nice as well now that we're back on track.
Yeah.
supposedly.
Nice.
So
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, we'll get to
we'll
that
get to
movie.
that.
Yeah,
because
we'll get to that. So.
Well, you know, we always like to start right at the beginning because, I don't know a lot about you other than your films, but a few weeks back at the Monsterpalooza convention, there was a Blumhouse panel kind of talking about the the State of Horror, and Rebekah was on it, and Ryan Turek, and Sadie Carpenter, and you. And I just thought a lot of the things you had to say about the genre were interesting, and it just kind of became obvious to me that you were definitely one of us, so to speak. Grew up with this material, understand it, etc. So what's the beginning for you? We always like to hear about, we're all pretty much of the same age. We're of the video store generation where we discover this stuff. How did you become a horror fan? What was like kind of the beginning for you there?
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you did One of Us, because like Freaks was one of the ones that really got to me young, because that was on TV, you know. But yeah, actually, the first thing I remember that really scared me to death was an episode of Fraggle Rock, believe it or not. It took me years to remember this.
It's just those fucking doozers, right? Those things were like
those things
bastard
were not
people.
cool.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
and they seem to be like, the Fraggles would come and like eat their cities. Yeah. And I thought that's pretty terrifying too.
But there's a talking trash heap, so that's always frightening.
Also scary.
But the Gorgs.
The thing that got me was the terrible tunnel. And my parents had to remind me about this because I didn't realize the link that this would have for me later. Yeah. But the Fraggles had this tunnel that they had to stay out of, and if they went in, all the ghosts of Fraggles who had disappeared were still trapped in the tunnel. It was terrifying.
Lawsuit.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's like Wembley's in there like, trade, and it's
weird.
bad. Yeah. Huh. But that was the first thing that I remember really, like, I used to sit up at night afraid of the terrible tunnel. You know?
Oh my God.
And then I was a real chicken with horror. Like, I vividly remember refusing to watch Thriller and having to like watch it through my fingers. And I didn't really get into it until like high school and college. A lot of movies, I didn't see The Exorcist till I was in college, and I was just a very fearful kid, and so when I finally did catch up with the genre, I got to kind of attack these movies that the covers, when I'd go into the video store as a kid, the covers would scare me, and I still remember some of those. Like I remember like From Beyond with this crazy like melty face screaming cover. That terrified me for years before I finally saw the movie. And like each one of those movies was like, now I get to confront one of young, kind of nerdy Mike's deepest fears by like watching this movie on VHS in college. So yeah, I came to it late and quite Wembley.
Do you remember the first one besides Fraggle Rock when you're young? Because we all have that one, even if you're scared, there tends to be one that you see some of and you wish you could have unseen it, and it just gives you nightmare. Did any
Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Oh yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
I love
Killer
it.
Clowns.
Yeah, Killer Clowns messed me up, and it was one of those things. It was another where it was on TV.
It used to be on HBO like all the time.
Yeah.
They'd repeat it nonstop.
And I like fell into it, and I was like, this looks fun. Clown, yeah. And then it was like, look at the bright colors, and is that cotton candy? And oh my God! And like, I remember there's a moment in there where like there's this one particularly upsetting clown who's hiding a giant hammer behind his back and he's like waving to this little girl. And I remember at the time being like, there's no safety in this movie. It's already traumatized me. They're going to kill this little girl, and I'm going to have to watch it. And like that movie messed me up for a long time.
Yeah, the tone of that film is really twisted.
Yeah.
I do too. I think it's one of those sad things. That's the exact kind of movie we can't have again. Like it's almost bit for bit when you think about it, like the fantastic elements of the 80s, the high concept effects, but in this like throwaway little movie that no one would ever make now.
The Chiodo brothers have been trying to remake that one for over a decade now, and it's just
they're
never
probably
come
20-year-olds
off the
when
ground.
they made that, right?
Yeah.
They must have been super young because they don't even look that old now.
Yeah, they've been trying for a long time
That's
to get
wild.
it rebooted.
So when did you get when did you get the filmmaking bug? I mean, was that something that you always kind of had a clear idea that you were going to get into, or did you have other interests growing up?
That was always pretty much it. I started... The filmmaking bug came when I saw Jaws for about the 15th time as a kid, and was starting to pick apart shot sequences and like appreciate the aesthetics of that movie. And that was the first one. I remember seeing it... I saw it on VHS, 4x3, and then I remember somebody showed me the letterboxed edition. And that was like, holy shit, I'm seeing... Ooh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
You can curse.
you
Yeah.
can curse all you like.
Should have asked. But it was like, oh my God, I'm seeing parts of the frame of this movie that I've memorized that I've never seen before. And so that really kind of kicked it off. I think the first movie I made with my friends was like, I was in 5th grade, and we had a VHS camera that we borrowed from somebody's parent. And we went in the backyard, and we all had little toy guns and fedoras and big coats, and we made the Untouchables.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I did an adaptation of Stephen King's It in 6th grade.
Wow.
Which was completely unlicensed. It would have gotten me into a lot of trouble.
Now, can we confirm that you are indeed doing the new Stephen King It in this moment?
We're in talks.
Okay, good. While we're at it.
Did you do dirty editing too? I made Wayne's World in 8th grade, so I know what you're doing. We used to do dirty editing where you would have 2 VCRs and you would like fast forward and then record on the other one so you could edit your film together that way.
And then I would do this. I had a whole system at the end for scoring where after I had edited the movie together, I would play it on a TV, set up the camera on a tripod to tape it off the TV while I hit play and pause on CDs so that the music I had chosen would carry over edits. So that by the time the movie was done, like the picture was already 3rd generation, from 2 VCRs and shot off a screen. It looked ridiculous. But yeah, it's like that. I was always doing that, and it alternately like delighted and horrified my parents, I think, because I would be like, everyone needs to leave the house this weekend because I need control of the house. And they'd come back and there's like fake blood all over the floor.
You start calling it set, and they're like, yeah, it's our house.
and then the bigger question for my dad became very quickly like, well, how do you expect to make a living doing this? And the answer was, I don't know.
Yeah. Like wait and see.
Yeah, I assume it's possible. Yeah. And by the time I went off to college, when I started as an undergrad, I was a history major. I was going to be a secondary ed teacher because I at that point had pretty much figured it was not possible. And so
where is this? In Massachusetts? Is that where you're
this
from?
is in Maryland. I was born in Massachusetts. My dad was Coast Guard, so we bounced around all over the place. But we ended up kind of settling for high school. We settled in Maryland.
Where in Maryland?
I lived in Bowie, and I went to high school in Severna Park and college in Towson.
Oh, okay. We've had this discussion.
Yeah.
I'm nearby. Okay.
Yep. We were close. The coolest thing about the way it all shook out was I was hanging my whole future on going to Loyola College to teach history. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get enough scholarship money. I couldn't afford to go. So I went to Towson State. And it was like, this is terrible. My life is over. But they had a film department, brand new one. And freshman year I took Intro to Film, and that was that. I mean, at that point it was like, no, I'm just going to lean into this. And it's still, 20 years later, I was finally kind of doing it for a living. It still took a really, really long time. But that was where I kind of, either got really brave or really delusional.
They're the stories everyone needs to hear to keep going, to keep pursuing. Do you remember the first film book? Because even though my taste like stray towards maybe the arty side of horror, my first filmmaking book was the Lloyd Kaufman book. Shoot Your Own Damn Movie.
Shoot Your Own Damn Movie.
Like that was the first book I ever read
one.
about filmmaking. So I when I was maybe 16 or something, flicking through that. Do you remember the first book that kind of broke it down for you?
Yeah, it was Spike Mike. Slackers and Dykes.
Slackers and Dykes, yeah.
Yep. And that was
the
funny.
Sundance Revolution. That
exactly.
Whole period, yeah.
And that's how I started. I was like, I'm going to be like Jarmusch and Ed Burns,
which I see totally in your
totally.
Way.
Yeah. And it was like I am going to make the Brothers McMullen over and over again until I get noticed and Sarah McLachlan sings my songs. And nice. And so I made that movie like 3 times as an undergrad. I made this like unwatchable Mike at 19 has a lot to say about relationships movie. And it was terrible. Yeah. But it was like, I want to do American Beauty. And it's like, but I'm 19 and I don't really know.
You got to make those, right? You got to make those to get to the next thing, I think,
Yeah. And it just took me longer than it should have of being like, okay, I'm going to keep making these movies. Why haven't I embraced commercial viability? Considering that my favorite movies to watch were horror movies, and that like my wall was covered. The only thing I had in my dorm room was hardcover copies of Stephen King books, and it was like it took so long for me to be like, I need to try to do a horror movie is kind of embarrassing.
Why do you think it was? Do you think it was because of the things that were popular at the time, or because you're in film school where it's kind of elitist into art house? And
I think that's it. I think there is this attitude in film school that like your film needs to change the world. Right.
I think we all get that because even like I can't say that my film school ever pushed us away from horror, but it was very much like Italian neorealism is where it's at.
Right.
No one watches
it's
this
the
stuff.
Paul Thomas Anderson, the best. I always tell the students when I'm teaching that that's Paul Thomas Anderson Anderson at NYU. First day of NYU, he sits down and the teacher goes, if you guys are here to make like Terminator 2 or something, there's the door. And he just stood up and walked out. He goes, I love Terminator 2. And never finished film school.
Well, it's funny that they picked that. Like they picked this universally
I'm sure that's
movie.
changed.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's actually a different movie. But the idea is like, a lot of us have, our palettes, we just love movies and but that's cool. So when was it that you actually like answered to that, the horror muse inside? Like what was the first?
It's 2005. It was the Oculus short.
Yeah.
Wow.
It took me that long. Yeah.
Which I only saw for the first time today, and we'll talk about Oculus the feature, but it's the kind of short that had because I see a lot of shorts. If I had just seen a still from it, it might have taken me a while to get to it. But because you're coming on, I'm like I'm going to sit down and watch this during work today, and it's really good. And I was telling you just before, for me, it actually deepened. I kind of wish I'd seen it with the feature now because I feel like it's like another chapter. I actually feel like the Oculus film. Even though the short's called what? Chapter 3.
We were trying to be George
like Leonard
Maltin,
Leonard Part 6 or whatever.
Oh yes, we were trying very hard to emulate Leonard Part 6.
Aren't we all?
Leonard,
we're all striving for that.
But for people who haven't seen, we'll post it on our thing. It's really interesting because it's the complete opposite of all your feature films that we've seen, which is really stylish, really confident and bold in your style. Instead, it's not a style piece at all. It's a complete disintegration of of a performance of a character. Trying to win against the mirror, and he's got it all planned out. He's got his VHS tapes ready, his camera's rolling. He's like bringing in test subjects, not realizing he is the subject, and it's really good. I got to say, I really like. I know something about the idea was enriched, I guess, for me by watching the short. Strangely enough,
that's great, and I'm really glad that it's out there.
Yeah.
Because that
is it on the Blu-ray or no?
It is on the Blu-ray.
Okay, so I could have just seen it on that,
which was so cool that they included it. It was funny because when it came time to do that, it was like I had to find it. Enough time had gone by that it was like I don't know if I have a mini DV master. I don't know if that's going to work. But yeah, it's
where'd the origin story of the mirror come from for you?
Oh wow. I don't know. It's one of those things where
Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, there's this episode of Fraggle Rock.
It goes back to Fraggle Rock.
Everything's about Fraggle Rock.
Uncle Matt had a mirror.
No, mirrors have always freaked me out since I was a kid, and I think there are moments I can point at movies that have moments with mirrors that mess me up forever.
It's Poltergeist 3, isn't
Poltergeist
it?
3.
Poltergeist 3.
Oh my god, we talk about that one
up.
all the time.
I tweeted today that'd be a good double feature. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Oculus and
Yeah,
Poltergeist
Oculus and
3?
Poltergeist.
that movie
Yeah.
freaked me out.
Yeah.
Like when I
We're fans.
finally saw it.
We're-
Good
yeah,
effects.
we're
Good effects.
fans.
But yeah, it's like that bit where whenever people's reflection wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, and when she reaches out to touch it, and it grabs her hands and pulls her
Evil
out.
Dead
Yeah.
1 or 2? Which one is it? Where he
Two.
pulls? Two.
Yeah.
There's
He's got the mirror
also
gag, yeah.
there's a scene in the movie Below that I always love where they're out of
Fantastic.
sync just enough to kind of fuck with your brain,
Yep.
and it's kind of you weren't expecting it when it happens.
We were talking about that in prep on the short,
Yeah.
actually, and Prince of Darkness.
Oh, yeah.
Using the mirror as kind of
Great
a portal,
ending,
and
Inferno. The big ending of Inferno.
Oh, that's right.
People
Yeah,
freak-
yeah.
It's a little different than yours, but yeah, big ending.
very true. Yeah. So it's like there were always these like seeds of ideas that I thought were really creepy, and I had recently learned of the tradition in Jewish funerals to cover a mirror to prevent the soul of the departed from coming back into the world, and that really freaked me out.
I never heard that. That's cool. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's one of those things where it's like you go into the funeral parlor and all the mirrors are covered, and as a kid you'd be like, why? And it's like, well, because we don't want them to come back. And it's like, wait, what? Like, so it's like that was all kind of a thing. And then I had read 1408, the King short story.
Oh, yeah.
And what I loved about 1408 so much was structurally it spent the whole first part of the story telling you the history of this room, so that before he ever went inside, you were petrified as a reader. And the movie kind of did a little of that, but like I had really wanted to be like, okay, I don't have any money, so can I do a short film where I spend the first 10 minutes telling a ghost story, and can I do it with the lights on and not do like the high contrast and all the horror stuff you're supposed to do?
Yeah.
And would that work?
And you still do it a little bit, like not as a spoiler to the short, but you still work on some really cool, creepy, actual creatures and things at the end. But the first 20 minutes is just talking.
Yeah. And a lot of that was we had no equipment, so
Turn it to an advantage.
it's funny. People are like, your other movies look so good, they look so polished, and this one is so like raw. And it's like, well, what you're saying is that you can tell that this was the movie where I didn't have a DP, and I shot it myself on a crappy camera with no lights and didn't know how to shoot a movie. And it's like it just looks really raw because I might as well have shot it on my phone.
I think it opens up an interesting thing because a common theme I'm hearing is Stephen King's work. What does Stephen King's work mean to you as a young person, and what does it mean now? Obviously, we know there's talks of you making one of the films, but just his body of work.
I mean, I find him to be. I had a hard time growing up of thinking of his stuff as horror, because it's like once I'd kind of embraced this identity where it's like I'm scared. I don't ingest horror, but I'm reading it, and it's like, well, I don't think of it that way, because if you pull the clown out, if you pull a lot of the horror elements out, it's still a captivating character piece.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the biggest thing that I responded to with him.
Look, Cujo, right? They're watching the movie. And we're all talking about last time we saw him. Where he's like, "Yeah, this is a 3-person, intense drama, and a kid's at stake, and even without the dog, there's something going on that's very kind of harrowing."
Yeah. No, and that's kind of the thing is like my favorite kind of stuff is if you strip out the supernatural, it still functions as an entertaining drama, or it has something important to say. And I think that's an idea I learned from reading a lot of King. Now, it's like his ability for world building blows me away. And it took me, I didn't get into Dark Tower until kind of late in my King reading career. And that was a hugely kind of overwhelming experience for me the first time I went through the Dark Tower. And it was like, this guy built a universe,
I still haven't done Dark Tower.
It's an experience, but give yourself
I'm
a
writing
year.
it down right now. I've never read
Dark
it.
Towers,
Yeah.
Well, at least they're done now, so you can read them all. Unlike when
This is true. I remember waiting.
Yeah.
I bet that's a good book on tape.
It's
Long cross-country drives.
I listened to Gunslinger when I moved out to LA on that drive, and it was funny because I'd already read it, but I was listening to it for the drive, and then I remember stopping at a Walmart somewhere in Texas because halfway through my trip, book 5 had been released. And it was like we had to pull over at 9 in the morning in the middle of the cross-country trip and make all my roommates wait in the car with our stuff so I could go to Walmart and buy a hardcover copy of the book. I'm like, why do you need a hardcover? Can't you just get can't you just figure out how to download the book onto your Kindle and you can read it much easier? It's like, I will read this in the car. It's like you're in the most cramped, we're all moving across the country environment, and you've got a book the size of a small computer in your hand.
You're a legit geek. I like that.
Big time. I'm the worst.
Of his film adaptations, because we always like talking about, we've had Mick Garris on our old show.
That was actually amazing. We were, I don't know
about
why.
Every film adaptation.
No, we were, I don't know what we were thinking. We had
tried.
Mick Garris on, and we're like, let's go
Every
film by
single
film through every Stephen King film
Not just his, but
adaptation.
every one.
And we made it we got really tired halfway through.
It was like a 2-hour thing.
All right, let's
It's
just
a tough
do-
slog.
What's the next one?
We were like jumping ahead, let's just jump to Pet Sematary, guys.
When a
Come
lot
on,
of them,
let's
most
just
of
get
us
there.
saw the film before the book, a lot of the times.
Yeah.
you
Oh,
just
yeah.
It was kind of simultaneous for me. I was just getting into reading when they just started adapting everything. Christine was on TV, and then all of a sudden there was a new movie for Pet Sematary, and it was on TV. So
Well, they
Well,
all
right when
seem
we
to
were
come.
born.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was within a 3-year period, 84
Yes.
around there, where they just came out in a plethora of them
80
all
to
at one
86
time.
is pretty much all the great
Yeah.
pieces that have been adapted for the most part of his
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
did you have any that particularly as the films, not divorced from the book material, that affected you as films?
Well, I mean, obviously The Shining.
Yeah, it's
and it's funny because my appreciation for The Shining as a masterpiece of cinema is at odds with my appreciation for the novel. It's like when I finally did catch up with the book, I was like, The Shining is a brilliant movie. It is not a very good adaptation of The Shining. And this is where I've gotten in so much trouble talking about this and Q&As and festivals and stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody always throws me under the bus because it's so easy to take this out of context. But I prefer the Mick Garris miniseries as an adaptation of the source material,
Sure.
not as an example of cinema.
Well, Mick listens, so that's a good thing.
Well, but
I'm not going to agree with you, but that's a good thing.
and it's like, I find, one of my big complaints is one that King had with the Kubrick, which was that Nicholson's portrayal of Jack Torrance is he's just crazy.
From the
Yeah,
opening
and he's
shot
crazy
of
from the
Noir.
opening shot.
Yeah,
There's
that is
nothing
a
there.
problem.
From the
If it
get-go.
wasn't the hotel, this guy was gonna kill the family.
The weird
shortly
thing is he
at
only
some
has
point.
one scene where he's normal, and that's the scene where he's doing the interviews.
Right.
When
Yeah.
he seems fine then, but when he's driving his family, he's batshit bonkers
Immediately.
already.
He's not even, and he's just like, and it's like, okay.
But Kubrick is one of those kind of directors who can't be true to the source material in
Right.
anything he's done. Even as Lolita, he always
Yeah,
has to
Clockwork
put...
Orange is
'cause of-
completely crazy. Or like the novel, you almost even side with Alex a little bit more. Like he gets more personal and is like, I want to have kids and a family. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, Alex is kind of a good guy. In the same thing in the movie, he's just evil from the
forget
get-go.
about it.
Which is nice, though, because it means you then have two different art forms that you can still enjoy. When somebody nails it and executive depth, like Gone Girl, I haven't read the book, but I'm pretty sure I'll never read it because,
why bother?
Yeah, if they're pretty close and the twists are all the same, then, why would I do it?
No, totally. Or like, to the King fans who have seen The Shawshank Redemption, but have not read Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, on which it's based, I would say you're fine. I love that short story, but you're not going to top what Darabont did with that movie.
Top 5 movies of all time is Shawshank Redemption.
So besides Shining, were there any others when you were young that you started? Like we were talking about Power of Cujo. Like it's really surprising how that's aged. It really holds up.
Pet Sematary. When I was a kid, really Zelda just did me in. Did me
all
in.
of us.
I remember seeing. I was really into the miniseries. I remember it terrified me. And then when I revisited the miniseries as a grown-up, it was like, what is happening?
Tim Curry's still great.
He's wonderful.
Tim Curry's great, and I think the kid portion is really strong. From
the
my
grown-up
memory
thing
of it,
falls apart.
Yeah, and it's ironic because the grown-up one is all the names, so to speak. But it's
great cast.
The kids do the most amazing job, and I used to come home from school every day and watch the kid part, like I guess it was the first VHS.
Yeah, that's right.
And I knew everything about that.
But as bad as that part falls apart, nothing can compare to Dreamcatcher, which is to me up there with.
I still haven't seen that one.
I can't remember.
Oh my god, it's so bad.
There's a Philip Kaufman, Ashley Judd, Morgan Freeman film, which is maybe the worst kind of big studio film I've ever seen, where like she blacks out every 10 minutes, and you're like, oh my god. But I remember in theaters, Dreamcatcher is one of the movies where I think my jaw was just hanging, going, you just changed tone again. Tom Sizemore, military people, you're like, what?
I don't know. And it's got comedic moments too.
And it's written by Lawrence Kasdan.
And it's got Marky Mark, but he's playing a mentally challenged person.
Yeah. Oh, that's a mess.
One worm, eat world.
It's
I don't know. Tommyknockers was also a little rough for me.
Tommyknockers is rough.
Yeah.
But it didn't have the pedigree that Dreamcatcher had.
Everyone was in it.
It was
like, this cannot go wrong. It was like
there were so many poop jokes in it
too.
My
God, so many poop jokes. And I read the book, which was full of poop jokes, but it felt scary. And like
because the alien makes you shit.
Yeah,
it does.
It makes you fart a lot, and then it blows out your ass.
It blows out your ass. That's
like
part of the alien's kind of MO.
I've heard because I did an article on Blumhouse.com about most famous toilet deaths, and everyone attacked me for not including.
It's a spectacular toilet death.
It's amazing.
Okay.
The thing about it, like, and I wish my college roommates could like call in right now to confirm this story. Nice. But I'd read Dreamcatcher. I loved the novel. I thought it was a really fascinating kind of inversion of the body snatcher paradigm, and I was like, this is cool. I really like this. I love the characters. I was like, this is really a unique book. They announced the movie. William Goldman's writing it. Kasdan's directing, and the cast just got better and better and better. And it was like Morgan Freeman. It was like, what? This is amazing. And it was like, and Damian Lewis. And it was like, he hasn't done anything since Band of Brothers. This is incredible. And Tom Jane, and like, this is going to be incredible. And then, so I created a countdown for my roommates that was Dreamcatcher Day, because we were going to see it. We were going to skip classes and work.
We're going to do this every year from now on.
Yes.
We're going to have Dreamcatcher
Happy
Day.
Dreamcatcher Day. And it's become, they still will do this to me every now and then.
Oh, really?
Someone will remember when it was, and they'll Facebook me like, Happy Dreamcatcher Day. And I'm like, fuck you. And like, we would count down, and I was driving this whole thing. I would, like, you were not allowed to work. We were going to go at 10:30 in the morning, opening day. We got the whole row at this theater in Owings Mills, Maryland, and it was like Dreamcatcher Day, woo! And, like, we'd watch. The trailer was awesome. The poster was awesome. This was going to be the best thing ever. And like, I forced all my friends in. It's Dreamcatcher Day. We started drinking early. It was like, this is great. We all get into the seats. The credits come up. My brother and I, who's also a big constant reader, is sitting on the other side of the aisle, and we lean over across everybody and give each other the worst thumbs up. Like, yes.
Freeze frame.
Yeah. Ding. And about 10 minutes into it, we leaned across at each other again and kind of were like, what? And about 20 minutes into it, we leaned across and we were like, are you seeing this?
Yeah.
And then by about midpoint, it was just, I was sitting with my head in my hands. My roommates were laughing so hard.
It was when the Jets came over that was like, what is this movie? Like, Yeah, well, it's
Yeah,
funny that
it's
everyone's having the same
We need
experience.
to do a Dreamcatcher
Yeah, I think we do.
screening now.
Yeah.
A commentary.
I
I think
wanna
the
know-
four of us in a room.
Dreamcatcher commentary.
Let us know when Dreamcatcher Day happens again. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing for
We'll
it.
do a Dreamcatcher commentary.
And
I think it
Dreamcatcher
needs
Day,
to-
you can have it for so many things. It's like I've encouraged my friends to have a Dreamcatcher Day for like Batman versus Superman. That's a perfect Dreamcatcher Day
yeah.
movie, you know? Like
and
anything that you can build up
That you
and
know
you're
is gonna be
guaranteed
disappointing.
Yeah.
to be
Guaranteed
disappointed.
disappointing.
I just remembered it is not Marky Mark. It is Marky Mark's brother,
Yeah, yeah.
Donnie,
It was Donnie
who was
Wahlberg,
a new
yeah.
kid on the block.
And he was in Soul.
That
Wasn't he in
was-
Soul?
yeah.
One of the Souls? No.
No, Sixth Sense and
Yeah.
the other. He's
No,
in.
he is in Saw.
Yeah, he's in one of
2
the
and
Soul
3.
movies. He's
Yeah.
a
2, 3, and
detective,
4.
right? Yeah.
Is that him? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
totally him.
it's one of the
Yeah.
Wahlbergs.
Yeah, and
It's,
Dead
it's a
Silence.
Wahlberg.
It's one of the singers.
We know what we're talking
One
about.
of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Donnie Don or Marky Mark. Or
Yeah, I
whatever
don't
it is.
know.
Yeah.
He was Funky Bunch.
Yeah.
So what did I'm just curious because it's you know Elric mentioned the Oculus short before, and what I find interesting is that you mentioned that you had to dig for it when the Oculus Blu-ray was coming out. So
Yeah.
this wasn't a case that you used the short to kind of get interest for a feature. What did the short for Oculus do for you?
I know it got great reviews on blogs and horror sites. It screened at like medium level film festivals and it won a ton of awards. And it prompted a bunch of interest in a feature, but not the right feature. It was a bunch of people that saw it and said, "We want to sit down with you because this movie didn't cost anything to make. There are cameras in the room. We think this could be a really cheap found footage movie." And it was like, well, the thing is, it's about distorting perception and reality for me, and found footage is objective by definition. What you see in the frame has to be real.
Yeah.
And this whole thing for me is about what is and isn't real. And they were like, "Well, you've got found footage in the short." And I was like, "No, I don't. I my cameras aren't great, but whenever you're seeing something that was on the tape, you're seeing it taped off a monitor. You know, I'm never claiming that we're in any kind of
Reality.
objective reality." And for the feature, it was really important that also be the case because I really wanted to mess with perception, and found footage would have made that impossible. So I'd either have people that were like, "Absolutely, we want it as a found footage movie," and I would have to walk away, or they would say, "We think you're right. This could be bigger. We wouldn't have to do it micro budget, but there's no way in hell we'll let you direct it."
Right. So there's
And so I was like, "Okay, well, all right." And so it seemed like a catch-22 for 7 years, and yeah, I eventually I had a treatment for the feature, and I threw that in a drawer, and all the copies of the short, like, I sent out with my very first manager when I was out here trying to sell scripts. And we took the meetings, and every couple of months another one would come up, and I'd go, and it'd always be the same. And
So when you get to your first feature, though, one thing I didn't know about it today, and I'm curious how it went because it's kind of early days, is crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Absentia was a crowdsource. Oh, how much of the budget was all of it was crowdsourced?
we raised $25,000 on Kickstarter, and it was when Kickstarter was still in its beta testing.
Yeah, early.
And then ultimately, we shot the movie for that 25, and we ended up all in the movie cost 70.
Yeah.
But that came later. Like a lot of that came because we already had it in the can. And
So some of the other companies, you got investors because you already had most of it shot.
it was actually a lot of our Kickstarter donors
Coming back to finish.
came back.
That's great.
Yeah, because one of the things about Kickstarter and crowdfunding in general is you can't own anything. You it's a gift. You don't get ownership of the movie. And so a lot of them came back after they saw how it was going, and they're like, "We'd like some ownership."
Oh, cool.
That's great.
That's actually really neat.
Yeah.
So how did to get in on something's beta test? How did
Yeah.
that even get on your radar, or the idea of crowdsourced money?
One of our producers, Justin Gordon, had seen a tweet from Neil Gaiman supporting another Kickstarter project.
Wow.
And so he had brought it to us, and he was like, "Hey, so Neil Gaiman's doing this thing. He was talking about it, and this thing has raised like $10,000. It was another short film." And at the time, they were still, I think there were about 100 projects on the site, and you still had to apply at Kickstarter to be included, and you had to kind of campaign for it. And
I kind of wish that still was the case.
Yeah.
It kind of would raise the
I
quality
get
and level of
2
things.
Kickstarters a day.
friendship tax.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Friendship
it's
tax.
and after I kind of friendship taxed everyone I knew to make Absentia happen, they all later would send Kickstarters, and
course.
for years I was like, I have to do it.
Yeah.
But it's rough, and it's become it's become really kind of unfortunate because if the project reaches its goal and gets all the funding and the movie's never made, there are no recourse.
Consequences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing for the people who put their money up to do. And so many movies just never go into production, and they're raising a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a mess. But so we did it, and I remember thinking at the time there was no way in hell it would work. I did not think it was a viable business model. I didn't understand why people would give up money. Like I'm used to trying to scramble for investors and be like, here's your low chance of getting your money back. And it's like, this was from the beginning, like you have zero chance, but you can get a special thanks and a DVD. And like, I really thought it was doomed. And we ended up having to make our little campaign for Kickstarter. We made these little videos. Each one starred a different member of the cast or the crew. And we made a new one every 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And instead of bombarding our social circle, because we already kind of knew how annoying that was going to be, we each only did it one time when it was our video.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time, we just posted other people's videos. So there was new content every 3 days, but I only ever sent one message to my network saying, please support it.
Yeah.
And that made a big difference.
Yeah.
And so suddenly we'd asked for $15,000 because we thought we could make the movie for $15,000, which is insane. And we raised 25. We're like, what are we going to do with this extra $10,000? We're
Bahamas?
We're idiots. Yeah. And we made the movie on a Canon 5D. It was all available lights. Crew of like 8 people in my apartment in Glendale, and that was at the time. I looked at that movie as kind of my last chance because Oculus the short hadn't generated what I thought it would. It had been 7 years since we had done that. I was making a living editing reality TV and like scrambling to try to make that work. And I had a baby on the way. And so it was like, like it's now or never. And the plan was I wrapped the movie a couple months before my son was born. And so I put down post-production. I finished editing to go into fatherhood. And I was working 2 jobs. And it was like, well, we're done. We'll just see what happens. And like, if nothing else, I directed a horror feature.
Yeah, you made a film, yeah. Which
and-
is all
and
that
worked.
all or nothing attitude probably burns through the frames of the film to audiences. Like it connects to people, How did you get people, if it was, made for such no frills, how did you get, say, Doug Jones or somebody like that, or obviously the very famous and talented Morgan Peter Brown,
Right.
Who it's hard to even get meetings with now.
He's been on our show before. We feel
Post-contracted
pretty
too.
awesome.
Well, we tricked Morgan the way Steve Martin did in Bowfinger. He was so big that we pretended to be shooting something else and would just follow him around. Dougie, the amazing thing about Doug Jones is, and this is bizarre, but you can go to his website and he'll say, "Contact me. I'll read your script if you want me to be in the movie." Like whatever. And then you go, and he will. He'll read
He actually responds.
Yeah, and it's like even if you have no money, he's like, "Well, am I available? Do I like your script? Do I feel like you're someone I want to work with?" And we asked for 1 day, so it was like,
you got all that in 1 day?
1 day. I was like, we have 1 day of your life, Doug Jones, and we'll pay you more.
He's
than...
also crazy nice. Like
So
people,
nice.
it's like one of those people you're like, you think there must be another agenda, because he's so nice. Like
No,
he has to be
genuine,
deep down about.
genuine nice.
And we're talking, for those who don't realize, we're talking about Pan's Labyrinth, Ghoul with the
Hellboy.
pale hands on his,
the
Silver
fawn.
Surfer himself.
Yeah.
Abe Sapien.
Yeah.
He's
Incredible bought physical actor.
from Hush, the Buffy episode Hush.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
gentleman.
Oh yeah, he's the gentleman. Yeah.
No, he's spectacular, and that was kind of a thing. We were all shocked when he agreed to do the movie, and then it was like, oh my god, we're going to look like kids. Like we need the day we called it Doug Jones Day, the day that he was there. And
Did you have a countdown?
We did. It went way better than Dreamcatcher Day, thank God.
Less disappointing ending.
Yes.
Did you have fake crew come in just so that you looked like you had more?
We had twice as many crew. We had
awesome.
extras. We had catering. The only time of the entire show.
Oh, I love it. This is a great tip.
And the rest of the cast was like, we have great food. Like, we have all this great stuff.
Yeah.
There's like a green room where we can relax. This is nuts. And we were like, well, if we don't impress Doug.
Yeah.
Because we thought we were being impressive by having like a light and food. He was great. The other thing was he had 2 scenes to shoot. It was less than 2 minutes of screen time. And he had as many takes as he wanted. And
Isn't that funny how memorable it is that it's only 2 takes? Because in my mind, having not seen it for a while, I feel like he was a big part of the story.
Yeah, well, it is because the scene he's in, like we didn't have time to make that movie, so it was like most of the scenes are covered in a very kind of normal aesthetic. It's a shot reverse shot, like kind of 3 angles for a dialogue scene, and we had to do it in 2 or 3 takes max because we didn't have time for anything else. But Doug's scene, he's on screen for 90 seconds in that tunnel. we cut to a brand new angle that's only used once in the film every second and a half. I covered it, I think 27 setups on his 90 seconds in there. It's the physical manifestation of a director's insecurity and feeling like I had to look like I knew what I was doing for Doug. I hit that scene with a bazooka. It was every angle I could imagine. And so Doug on like take 15 of setup 25 is just like, you sure you don't have it? And I'm like, don't worry, Doug. We're going to give you as much coverage as you can possibly stand. You're welcome. And the scene sticks out like a sore thumb because you watch the movie and it's like it's so kind of pedestrian the way the scene construction is just because we didn't have a choice. And all of a sudden he shows up. Just count the edits. It's nuts. And so that was Doug Jones Day, which was a good day.
I mean, when that film hit, though, I mean, this is the first real, in my memory, like post House of the Devil movies like that. But this is far more indie than even that. It was one of the first like micro, no budget features I remember really getting great press. Like it was word of mouth that elevated your film.
I remember like the day that we received a screener of it at Fango that we passed it to every member of the staff because it literally like went from Gingold to Tony to Sam to me, just like, oh my God, you got to see this, you got to see this, you got to see this.
Fango really like they led the charge.
We
with that
blew
movie.
it up.
Yeah.
We loved it
big time. Yeah. Thank you for that.
No problem.
I would not be here, I think, otherwise.
But it's similar to the same, I mean, it's the back end of the crowdsource. So on the front end, you had crowdsource to thank for funding it. And the back end, and the film has to be good for this to happen. People raised it on their shoulders and champion it. It's pretty interesting. And it's how did that affect your career? I mean, at that point to make the next thing, like what did Absentia do?
It was such a fascinating thing because it did everything I wanted it to, kind of very quietly. I suddenly had from one of our Kickstarter donors said, "Who represents you?" And I was like, "Nobody." I'd had managers over the years, but I never sold anything. So that was done. And I was, a TV editor. So it's like I wasn't on the radar of any agency or management company. And they were like, well, a friend of mine is an entertainment attorney. And, I'd like to show him the movie. So he saw Absentia. It was Joel Vanderkloot, became my attorney. He's still my attorney. And he then introduced me to managers, who introduced me to agents, who set up my first general meeting, kind of post-Absentia, where suddenly it was like I was taking a real meeting. And it was with Anil Kurian at Intrepid Pictures, which was run by Trevor Macy and Mark Evans. And I went in and I pitched Anil 5 ideas, 2 of which have since been made, one of which ended up being Before I Wake, but wasn't formed yet at the time, and he passed very smartly. And on my way out the door, it was just like, kind of a blown general meeting, nothing really stuck. And I turned around and I said, well, I have this movie about a mirror, a short film, and I have a treatment for it, but I have some conditions. And he said, well, we'll talk about that later if we like the short. And he passed it up, and Trevor Macy called up and said, come back in, we want to talk about Oculus. And he said, so listen, we really love this. The thing is, though, we think you can direct it, having seen Absentia, but it can't be a found footage movie.
And you're like, rubbing your hands.
And it was just like, and then suddenly it was. I remember when they bought it, it was going to be a $2 million, maybe small theatrical run, kind of tiny little genre movie, and it just kept growing. But so it was funny, and I would go to casting sessions and prep meetings by sneaking out of my day job cutting TV and not telling them where I was going and not telling anyone at the casting session that I was coming from work and needed to get back. And I'd be gone for hours, and I was going to get fired real fast. But I didn't know what else to do. And the movie wasn't paying enough, especially at the beginning when it's just like they option your script and that's that I could quit my job. So it got to the point where it was like, I'm going to ride this as long as I can until I either have to quit because we're going into pre-production or it falls apart, which they kept telling me kind of at every turn was very possible, just because that's a movie.
You never hear people talk about how difficult, like looking at Absentia for $25,000, and I don't know what was the budget of Oculus stuff.
Ended up being $6 million.
Okay, $6 million.
Wow.
And the look of it, I see that on the screen, which is the nice part. It's a very stylish, really confident film. But what, as the filmmaker making that leap, like, are you noticing, besides catering and all that crap, are you noticing the difference of what you're doing as an actual job? Like, while you're making that, how different was that experience?
Night and day.
Yeah.
Yeah. The beauty of it is, though, is that I love the kind of work that it actually is. So, the thing I never had time to do with Absentia, like shot list properly, do storyboards, like really get into the sequences ahead of time. There's time to do that, and it was expected of me. So the things that I wish I could have done when I was like purely indie, I could do now. And there's still all the same problems are there. You never have enough time. You never have enough money. There's not enough time in the day, and you're killing babies kind of left and right. So that was all the same, which was comfortable. Like that was like, cool, this I know. This is a stress I can live with. The biggest difference was that I was being taken seriously by a lot of bigger actors when we would go out and try to cast people. So it wasn't like, trying to get like my neighbor to come in and give me 2 lines or something like that. And it was also really fantastic having really experienced department heads. And with Absentia, it was such a labor of love for the crew, but for a lot of them it was their first film. And so there was a learning curve that we were all on together. And it was really awesome being in a group where it was like, now everybody knows what they're doing. And I can learn a lot, which is, kind of the thing. I think that's the difference between kind of a successful first film and an unsuccessful one. Like whether critics like it or it performs, if you as a filmmaker learn a lot, then it's a successful film, which is, one of the only ways I can sleep at night thinking about my first 3 movies. But yeah, it's like, your education never really stops. So if you come out of a movie and you're like, I've learned so much in this experience that you can carry into another movie, and you're going to get a chance to make another movie, that's hugely successful, even if it tanks.
So a trend that I've become increasingly aware of that's out there, but I don't really understand it, and I have no idea if anyone does, is there's kind of a critical, I guess, festival backlash or something that is happening to certain movies. And the first one I was aware of, at first two, were definitely hearing about your film, Oculus at Toronto, and then your next at Toronto, which had these huge bidding wars and did really well, and people are super excited, and then they get locked away for a little while, especially your next. I mean, that felt like it was shelved for 2 years or something.
Yeah, something like that.
It was a long time, and it was weird because it's going to be good because you heard early people talk about it and gets you excited about the movie. And then I remember Oculus was getting since the same trend I liken most recently to The Witch.
Yeah,
and I can honestly say of the movies we're highlighting, and It Follows a little bit, not quite as much. And there was one other big one in that. Oh, Babadook, of course, had the similar
Witch
kind of
as well.
No, The Witch is the one I was just mentioning. It's the most recent.
But It Follows, I'd say, was in that.
Yeah, a little. But the Witch is like to the point where they're like, "Is it hard?" And you're like,
"Yeah."
Is that a slap?
No,
did you feel it on your face?
Hard. Yeah,
it's just idiotic. But I'm curious, like from you being in that, because looking back at Oculus, honestly, I can say right now, I honestly think it might be one of the most underrated movies of the last decade of horror films. And I didn't even necessarily feel that when I first saw it. When I was watching, I was like, I'm liking this movie. Thinking about your movie since, it keeps going up in my.
How long was the gap, by the way? Because I remember it wasn't
for Oculus
long. It got all this press out of the festival, and then it came out a couple of months later.
It was a little while because we had to go do. I feel like we had to go tinker with it. They always make you do that. That's the thing is if a movie comes out and it's really well received at a genre festival in particular, like a studio is going to get it, and if they're going to be like, "This is great, we're going to put it out wide," and the minute they say wide, look out, because that's when everybody's going to show up and try to change the movie.
And that's the word. I think that wide is where I'm curious. With yours, maybe I do get a little more when I think about your film with a wide audience and the kind of. And I'm sure it was received well with critics and stuff. But there's certain people, on Twitter and all this stuff who get like, "Oh, stupid," or "I don't get it." But your film's actually kind of complex. So I was looking back and going, like the editing, you've got parallel storylines. The set with time periods apart, and for broad mainstream America, I started thinking back to it, going, "Yeah, maybe I can get why that might not work for some people."
And so you have all those conversations. It's like they buy the movie, and you're so excited because they bought the movie, and then they're like, "Well, we are worried that the nonlinear structure may be too much for a wide audience. Have you thought about recutting it to be linear?"
Ugh.
And
so
at that
they
point,
try to make it as vanilla as possible.
Not a movie, then,
yeah, and it's this thing that happens. I think two things happen at once. The first being that horror fans at a festival like that are really, really enthusiastic fans. So if they like a movie or it really catches them off guard, what you hear is the movie starts being talked about in terms of chunks of 10 years. or it's like, this is the best movie of the last 10 years, or this is the scariest movie in 20 years. So you start to see the whole thing kind of comes in these big
Babadook
chunks.
had that big time, right?
Big
when it
time.
came in when Babadook landed.
Oh, yeah. And Babadook didn't go out wide. So it's Babadook was a limited release. And It Follows started limited and then grew into a wide, which is that's the way you want to go.
Which is the Miramax model. Always was, and how they won awards every year.
Yeah.
Because they platformed, and it worked like gold for them. Yeah.
Well, it's very smart because it takes the expectations and keeps them realistic while creating demand.
Yes,
and
creating demand is the key.
If you come out of a festival really well reviewed, you know, the immediate thing that's going to happen is the other shoe. Is that you're going to have people that have been reading about it and are skeptical, or reading about it and might just feel like it's overhyped. But a movie they otherwise would have said, like, that was great, they're going to say, that was bad, because it didn't conform to the picture they've now built, having read all the reviews. And, you know, prior to those reviews being out in the festival world, no one knew a damn thing about the movie. So all the opinions that come out of the festival are immediate, and a lot of them are kind of overreactions. Then you have the overreactions the other way. The problem with a wide release picture is that all of those come opening weekend, because it's the next time someone sees it. So that means you're setting yourself up for this, like, well, it wasn't all that deflation that happens the minute the movie's available to the wide audience. I find that to be really kind of a bummer. And that's even if you're able, you know, the cut that we released for Oculus is the Toronto cut. It took us a long time and 5 or 6 different versions of it to get back where we started. And the only reason we got back was that we had independently tested the film before anyone bought it, and our test scores were better than the new cuts.
Were you at all prepared for that? Had you seen that happen in any other movie, or like that kind of reacting to like the initial press once the film came out?
No, this is I learned all this kind of as we went, and saw it happen to other movies. I think it happened to You're Next in a big way.
Yeah,
I think it happened to The Witch in a like extraordinary way. And I think then you looked at, you know, It Follows and Babadook, where it happened less, and I think that's because they weren't wide initially. There's something with wide release movies because everybody complains that there's nothing new or original on the wide release spectrum, or that the wide release movies have been sanitized to appeal to the most people. And in a lot of ways, that's correct.
Right.
But everybody supports Annabelle, and nobody goes and sees The Witch. So it's like, for as much as the fans complain, when there's an opportunity to embrace something different, there's this incredible reluctance, especially if it has good reviews. Like, especially if people have built it up.
Do you remember the people who championed it when it finally did come out? Why? Do you remember like the sites or the people? I have no idea. So who really championed you through that period?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was interesting. It was a lot of the people who had been behind Absentia too. You know, because it was Fangoria, Dread Central, Arrow in the Head to some extent, although they're always tougher on me. But you know, Bloody D was hit or miss for me. But the horror blogs in general were kind and would push the movie. The places where you get killed isn't with the blogs or even with the fans, because even the horror community makes up a small percentage of the people that are going to go see a movie wide. We would get killed. No one ripped us to pieces more than City Papers when we first came out. A lot of whom it seemed like hadn't even seen it. And we're like, this is just a run-of-the-mill horror movie, you know?
Right. Which it really
like,
isn't.
Well, it's anything but, because it doesn't follow any previously set formula.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like, even if you don't like it, I don't think you can say it's run-of-the-mill, you know? And then we got ripped to pieces when it finally came out on, like, Netflix and Redbox. That killed us.
That's shocking, because that's where I think that a lot of horror films that get kind of disparaged at the box office will get rediscovered.
They get
Netflix.
Streaming a little.
Oh, they get discovered. It just takes a lot for someone to write a positive Netflix review.
Yeah.
And if you want to see like an incredibly depressing look at like the sad state of intelligence in the country, pick a movie you like and read the Netflix reviews.
Yeah.
Like read the ones that the people took the time to write, because more times than not, if you like a movie on Netflix, you enjoy it. You say, that was good, and then you tell a friend to watch it, but you don't rate it, and you certainly don't go in and write.
It's true. I don't think I've ever actually rated a film that I enjoyed, but if the film pisses me off, I'm
There you
more
go.
inclined to be like, 1 star for you, fucker,
Exactly.
and then I go on.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's
there's
true.
something motivating about not liking a movie.
Yeah.
And so that's what you get a lot.
I got to say, even though it's jumping forward a bit, I do want to mention, because it was actually one of my favorite experiences of the year was watching a movie this way, which is the complete opposite of that model, which was I had heard about Hush screening at South by. I think I saw Ryan Turek or somebody else write about it saying how awesome it was. And then, like, literally I blinked 2 weeks later and I was watching it on Netflix streaming. And that added to my joy of watching it tenfold, because as a person who doesn't always get to festivals, we go to festivals, but not as much as the people who cover everything. And I hate, it's painful waiting 2 years or a year and a half to watch Green Room. It was totally worth waiting because it was worth every
great movie.
But with Hush, it happened so quick, and I couldn't even believe it when I saw it was coming on. So there's a lot of people, it must have been a poor deal because they went straight. But we've since cleared that up.
And I thought it was a cool. I
loved
cool
seeing
that,
it like that.
That Friday night that it debuted, like everybody on my Facebook feed, like
we were all
everybody
watching
was.
it.
That was the movie to watch that night.
Yeah,
I was like, this is super cool. Like, there's an original horror movie on Netflix that we're all watching.
And it felt like a safer way to go wide. And I know some of the listeners, even when we talked about how much we liked it, they would say, but they should have gone theatrical with it. And I think about the movie and I go, I don't know if that's the way for that movie. I feel like now we're in a new age of where certain movies make more sense for a certain way of seeing it.
It made it ridiculously accessible to everyone. Like, even friends that I went to college with who vaguely know what I'm doing now were posting up on my Facebook page, that movie that your company made, I loved it. And these people never contact me, but it was accessible for everyone.
Well, and they would not have gone to the theater.
No, they would not.
And I mean, to this day, I don't know how you cut a trailer for a wide release for that picture. I don't know how. Like, the trailer we had, for the festival was the closest I could come up with for a trailer, and it still felt like an art film.
I get the feeling like if that went wide, the reviews would say, this film is slight, ... And then instead on Netflix, the way it came out, it's like, this is a minimalist masterwork. But it's the same thing, but what you're turning the slightness to it's actually maximizing what you do on screen.
Yeah.
It's...
No, that was and I think you're going to see a lot more movies released that way now, because it is... the bottom line was we got a better deal from Netflix for that movie than we were offered for our day and date theatrical options. Netflix is very aggressive about getting content, and they love the idea that you can only see it there.
And they've got money.
They've got all the money, and which is funny because I'm always like, well, you don't sell ad space.
Yeah.
Like, who are you robbing? How are you accomplishing this on $15 a month from a viewer? But I mean,
I think
people.
Everybody's
in
doing
the world.
it.
And I have to say, like, even and I keep maybe I won't do it this week, but since the very dawn of the site, Blumhouse.com, I have been doing a weekly Netflix roundup. And I mean, half the time I'm just like, okay, well, I'll do monster movies this week because they haven't put any new horror on there. But those articles always do great.
Yeah.
And
because people don't feel like they're paying for those movies.
Yeah.
No, they're free.
Yeah.
They're free.
They're free, quote unquote free.
Oculus has always been on there, right?
You are paying.
Yeah, it's always been on there.
I think of them as free too. And I mean, I know it's
I do.
charged to my
I
credit
think of
card
them
or
as
every
free, I must say.
month or
I feel like I'm
something,
getting
but-
away with something.
Yeah.
Like when I was watching Hush, I'm like, oh man, I hope to, it's like to download it illegally.
I got
movie.
this for free.
Yeah.
No,
But-
it was that way with the Pee Wee Herman movie where I'm like, they're just going to give this to me?
Yep.
And I mean, I'm paying
Before
for it,
anyone
but
else?
I'm just getting it today.
Or the TV where it's like, and here's the whole season.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even have to wait. Like,
So already maybe that's playing us psychologically, giving us goodwill towards something because
Yeah.
we're also feeling like we're getting away with something.
Well, and it lowers your expectations
Yeah.
because there's this sense that, like, oh, everything on here is free. It's this kind of catalog of movies that I can watch on demand. And so if you're surprised by a movie, you're very surprised by a movie.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened, like with Taking of Deborah Logan.
Yeah.
That was one that kind of took people, or The Last Shift was another one where
Creep.
Creep, great example,
you
where
don't
they
know
just
anything
kind of
about it.
appear on Netflix. You don't know anything about it, but then the act of discovering it makes you love it even more.
I just had that with They Look Like People.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
knocked
I
me
gotta
reviewed
over.
that a couple weeks
so
ago,
cool,
Yeah, and then I was like, you made this for nothing?
Yeah, it looks like
and it's just, available. It's on Netflix now.
Yeah.
And
It was
like,
on
it's
my
just
roundup
there.
from
Yeah.
last week.
And
totally
that blew
minimalist,
me away.
very simple, and it still gets
Another one, The Keeping Hours, is another one that I discovered on Netflix that I had heard.
The Keeping
nothing-
Room?
The Keeping Room.
Yeah,
thank
Britt
you.
Marling
The Keeping
film. I
Room.
haven't
That
Right.
was it.
I was going to say, Keeping Hours is another Blumhouse movie, right? The Lee Pace.
Oh, it is.
Oh, so maybe you are talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
No,
the
no, no.
Western.
I'm
That's
talking
about-
about The Keeping Room.
You're right,
Thank
The
you.
Keeping Room,
The
Western,
one
right.
that's got Britt Marland in it,
Oh, yeah.
and it's about three women during a Civil War, I'm guessing.
Yes, I didn't say Western-y
And
vibe,
it's kind of a rural thing. But yeah, they get held hostage with soldiers trying to get into the property. And yeah, it was one that I discovered and watched a couple nights ago.
Before we
It was
move
awesome.
forward with Hush, though, because we are out of our chronology, I want to actually jump all the way back to our Absentia poster talk, which we forgot.
Oh, right.
Which is very important because you move out here. And
you're the first poster to do that image, which then, I think, right?
We call it the red box image.
The red box image.
It's basically...
Were we the first? I felt like that must have existed long before movies.
I don't know, but Ryan Turek did an article, I think, back in Shock 2 Drop, and it started with the Absentia cover, and it was literally a series of covers and posters that were all the same girl getting dragged away on the floor.
I like to think she made more in royalties.
I hope
of all those than I've made on Absentia.
Yeah, you can hope. And was Absentia always the title? Because that's the other thing is now you see people retitling things that have to start with A, B, or C.
Oh, yeah, they love that. I didn't realize that.
To.
Yeah, I was obsessed with nerdy Latin titles was my thing, and with Oculus and then Absentia, and we had already written Somnia. And it was
were you a Latin student? I did 7 years.
I was not a student. I just think the language is so cool.
I was looking to geek out with you.
Yeah,
but
I wish.
I will hold that
like
back.
the key concept of the film, right?
Right, definite censor.
So it seems like it would have always been tied to your...
That's how we kind of came to it, was while researching declaring someone dead, which is really important. When I saw that word come up, it was like, what a great word.
Yeah, that's a great way, organic way. So what is the key? Did some marketing person just give you this cover and say, do it?
This is it.
Oh,
is it like a scene from Mulholland Drive where it's like...
Phase 4 doing it, or was it in Netflix?
Yeah,
and they just said, you will put this on the cover if we were going to do your movie?
Oh, no, we had already made the deal. So that was the thing is, selling your first movie, you don't think to ask what that'll be. So they already controlled it. They owned it outright by the time that was done. And they just said, here's your cover. And it was like, wait, what? And they sent it. I remember they sent us the first cover, and I freaked out. And I was like, this is awful. They're like, no, we think this is actually going to sell really well because we want to get the movie into Walmart, and people are going to see this in Walmart. They're going to buy the movie for $6. And it was like, well, I really had higher hopes for how this movie would be perceived. And I was like, the thing is, the person who buys this cover is not going to like the movie. And the person who would like the movie would never touch that cover. Yeah. So we're kind of screwed. And then they said, okay, well, we'll show you the other options that, our people had come up with. And they sent us all the options that they had entertained. And some of them, I swear to God, must have been jokes because one of them was like the silhouette of someone in the tunnel, and there was a giant man holding an axe, and it was like, what the hell is that?
That's the German A.J.
Bowen, the German horrible way to die.
A horrible way to die. Have you ever heard that story?
Axe in the snow.
There's an axe in the snow.
He's got an axe in the snow, and there's all these victims that he's cut up, and in the movie he just strangles people.
Yeah.
But the American A Horrible Way to Die is the same cover as Absentia, isn't it?
I think it's something similar.
No, she's upside down in the American cover.
Okay.
That's a great poster, actually.
I didn't come here to die.
Yeah,
That's
I didn't
the
come
one.
here.
I didn't come here to die is the same cover as Absentia.
Which is also a big seller on Redbox.
Yeah.
That kind of made that company.
I mean, and if you're a Redbox, fanatic who just goes to Redbox to get your movies, and it's like, oh, there's that girl. This time she's getting dragged away by giant birds.
Who is that girl?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's going to be that's a news story.
They got to find her.
We're going to find
that girl on every cover she's.
Well, because what I want to do is cast her as a lead in a movie.
Yes,
and then
get that actual shot.
No. I want to do a poster that's actually Katie Parker from Absentia.
Oh, yeah.
But
Perfect.
yeah,
there was another one that they did that same year where it was a girl crouched in a corner naked.
Yeah.
And on some covers, like she was on the cover of this film called Scourge. I remember she had tentacles coming out from behind her, and then she was on another one and she was covered with blood, and it was clearly the same girl. They were just adding weird stuff to her each time.
They I think they have all this clip art that they buy. And then someone goes in and photoshops it to try to fit something-ish like the movie that they haven't watched. Wow. So, because whoever did the axe thing for us did not watch the movie.
Yeah, that's weird. Did they threaten it the same thing with Oculus? Because Oculus ended up being pretty pure, right, with the art?
No, Oculus was actually from the movie.
It was all right. Yeah, the first Oculus one, which was a girl kind of coming out of the mirror sideways. Uh-huh. I don't know who that girl was.
Okay.
And I objected at the time. And it ended up being, a shot of Annalise Basso and Garrett Ryan. Uh-huh. But people, it was funny, people didn't like that poster. People liked one of the girl coming out of the mirror. Huh. But we don't know who that girl is. So it was like, I've yet to kind of have a pure experience with key art because with Absentia, I was mortified, and to this day, I'm horribly embarrassed to the point that I went off and designed another poster for Absentia and put it up on IMDb, and tried to put it up on Amazon. And they wouldn't let me because they were like, "You're who are you? You're just a fan." And I was like, "No,
kind of."
The movie.
Like I am a fan, but I really hate this art. And can I please just erase it?
Let your mom
database?
do it. Yeah, let her take over.
My son worked very hard on this movie. And so I've tried to kind of correct it on my own. And then with Oculus, I wasn't crazy about the art, and I think that hurt us too. The way the movie eventually kind of performed. And then with Before I Wake, formerly Somnia, we have a movie starring Jacob Tremblay. From Room. Who's like the most recognizable child in America right now. And we have a poster of some other kid.
Oh.
And I don't know who that kid is. And I can't even really tell because they've covered him up with a butterfly.
Oh, interesting.
But I'm like, I don't know who that kid is.
I have to look up this poster.
So what happens post Oculus box office? From what it was made, what did it make back?
Oh, it did. We did fine. I think we did 28.
Oh, that's pretty
28
good.
US, 48.
Oh, okay. So this was a success financially.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't hate this poster.
I don't either.
I
just hate
don't
that
know who
it's
this
not Jacob.
kid is, but
What I like about it looks like
art.
a Freudian.
Yeah,
what's
it looks like a Rorschach.
Rorschach, yeah. Right.
No, what's interesting though is, that more than my other stuff looks like horror movie to me, right? That is not a horror movie, which is I think where we're about to get killed with that one.
So how did you go? How did you get the next gig? So from Oculus. So in my mind, I didn't know if it was a success or not. I just remembered,
it worked.
Press.
Yeah.
So it was a success. It was made with relatively.
It was no OUIJI,
right?
But it did fine.
And so how did that lead to going and making your next film? Which no one in America has seen.
So Somnia, we had written it after I'd written Oculus, and we were kind of waiting for all the movies to get going. I called it my Latin trilogy. It was Absentia, Oculus, and Somnia. And Somnia was always my favorite one, and the one that I was like, I will protect this movie till the day I die, because this is my most personal thing, and it's not even really, it's got more in common with like Pan's Labyrinth than anything else. And so Trevor Macy, who had produced Oculus, said, "What else do you have?" And we were about to take that script out wide, and he said, "I think let's go make it." And it was a really tricky movie because it was more expensive than most genre fares these days. It had this huge visual effects component that I had never had before. And
butterflies.
Butterflies.
I saw the trailer. It looks really magical realism kind of.
Yeah, it doesn't go quite as far as I thought it would because we had some budget problems. Like that movie's been cursed, really. And it came out. I'm thrilled with the way it actually came out. I just think it's had a really tough road.
Real butterflies, fake butterflies, digital,
dreams.
Digital. Yeah.
And my whole thing was like, because the kid, he whatever he dreams about manifests physically, and so for the butterflies, I had wanted none of them to have antenna because he's 8 years old.
Oh, so he doesn't have a correct
wow.
picture.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
So the butterflies are all like kind of an 8-year-old's interpretation of a butterfly, and later he draws a picture in class of one, and a little girl leans over and adds antenna to the picture, and from that point on in the movie, every butterfly has antenna.
Yeah, that's a nice detail.
But it's like stuff like that no one will ever notice. But we don't call any proper attention to it in the movie because like having someone be like, "Does that have antenna?" Which is never going to work. But
now we know.
Yeah, it's
So what you said it's cursed, but did the shoot and everything leading up to the production go fine? Was it really just the back end that has had the issues?
It was challenging. It was a big movie. We had we rolled into production kind of as soon as Oculus was released. We were in prep, and so we shot that movie in 2013.
Wow!
Good grief, 2014, maybe 2014. Might have been 2014. But yeah, it was right after Oculus came out, which, was 2014. So, but we were shooting and wrapped by the holidays 2014. And, we had little Jake up there who had not yet gone off to do room. I remember when we were in post, the producers from that movie wanted to see clips from him.
And could you see that magic in him when you were doing your film?
I thought he was incredible. And it was funny because I was like, this is the best child actor I've ever seen, and I still hadn't seen anything compared to what he did in Room. Like I thought, I was like, oh, that Jacob Tremblay is amazing, and we got great stuff out of him. And then I saw Room, and I was like, oh my god,
can we reshoot?
I mean, it was like he can do that. Oh my god. But yeah, so we finished the movie, and it looked like everything was actually going ridiculously well because Relativity bought the movie before we finished the edit.
So they didn't produce the film. Okay, so Intrepid produced
produced it,
and then Relativity buys both films.
Yes, and our thing initially was we weren't going to let anyone buy it. We were going to take it to TIFF. And Relativity was so aggressive. They were like, "Look, we did Oculus. It did well for us. We want your next movie. We'll take it right now as a rough cut."
I'm already $2.2 billion in debt. What's it matter?
That would have been a nice. That would have been a nice thing
a nice
to
warning
add.
sign.
And so they were so aggressive with us, and we were like, "This is great. We can have 2 movies come out within 6 months of each other, basically. Like as soon as this movie's done, it's just going to come right out." And we started to realize something was wrong when they first dated it, and without any explanation, pushed it back. And typically, if there's something like that, it's like, oh, well, we want to talk about reshoots.
Yeah.
Or there's, we've got a new marketing department that needs time to gear up on a campaign and we haven't cracked it. Because I always knew this was a tough movie to market because it isn't a straight horror movie.
Yeah.
And, but they wouldn't tell us initially that anything was wrong. And it was like all of the movies are kind of getting pushed aside. And then we would notice that we would say things like, well, where's the poster or the trailer? And we would hear from the vendors that it was like, well, we're not giving it to them because we have invoices outstanding. And it was like, oh, crap. And by the time we knew something was really wrong with the company, they had already paid for the film and had put up P&A on it. So, like, there was no way to extract it at that point.
They'd already spent too much.
Yep. And it was like, even if someone else was going to buy it, they'd have to buy them out. And the movie was twice as expensive as any other horror movie on the market at the time anyway. So it was like, we are stuck with however this is going to resolve or not resolve. And so the movie just kind of heartbreakingly, folded as they went into bankruptcy.
Domestic and international? Or
it's domestic.
Okay, because you hear reports it's played in Australia or somewhere like that. And
it has started to do that. The trick with that side of the market is that you sell it to foreign territories a lot of times based on the promise of the wide release in the States first.
Yeah. And
so a lot of our foreign territories either kept pushing it back in tandem with Relativity.
To follow those dates,
or finally got fed up and dropped it. And so, like, we've had some territories overseas who have released it and who have just been like, we're not waiting anymore. And we've had others that have been like, we're just going to put it in turnaround. Like, we're just going to give somebody else a chance to buy it.
Yeah, for those who don't read Variety, what happened with Relativity is Ryan Kavanagh, who is the first of what they called a mini major, which is a studio that basically kind of formed from the outside of the studio system. And it was very successful for a while. And then they kind of woke up and said they have about $2.2 billion in debts. And then they spent the last... And I was teaching at the school, which is a separate entity. It just has the same name. But I'd hear things. And, they... went into this kind of bankruptcy thing. So a really great Vanity Fair article all about the rise and fall of Kavanagh.
Oh, yeah, they've chronicled everything.
And he's an incredibly charismatic person if you ever talk to him, and you can see...
Incredibly.
You can see why both sides would happen.
Yeah.
You can see how he could talk someone into anything, for one. And he's also going to land his jet plane on your roof. And but the weird part about the story is just when you think it's over, like you just totally thought, okay, they're going to be dissolved, that company's going away.
Yeah.
Suddenly they got bought, and he kind of bought it back.
Yeah, he's back.
He bought it back himself. They didn't get bought. He found the $210 million or something,
and has emerged from bankruptcy, still in charge.
Still in charge. And well, for a while they made up. I'm not going to say made up. That makes it sound like a lie. But
Kevin Spacey jumped in and out of the company.
And who's
like
a
a
part
cold
of Trigger Street Films, which is
a
a very successful. Produced a lot of your favorite movies. Took over, and they said Kevin Spacey would be in charge of production as well as his partner, Dana something. And so what happened? I went to work once, and I was like, that's so great. Has anyone seen Kevin Spacey? And they were like, never went to his office yet.
I thought he was shooting House of Cards the entire
he never
time.
showed up, and then he pulled out.
Yeah.
But his partner stayed in. And so that's a good sign because he is Dana Peretti is the name.
Yeah.
And he's a really, really, he does good work. And so he's there now. They are technically, out of
bankruptcy.
And the only problem is, will they make the same mistakes? Or
luckily, this is where it works in our favor. We're the first movie they're releasing under this new thing. So September 9th is what they've given us.
So you have a release date.
We have
in America.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
awesome.
How
wide is it going?
Wide, like 3,000 screens, like
That's awesome.
full
Wow.
wide.
Okay, I did not know any of this, so this is a really good ending to the story.
No, it'll be for better or worse. It'll be released wide, where it is now going to come up against the mechanism you were talking about.
Yeah.
only without the benefit of a festival screening.
Yeah.
Where the only existing reviews are from foreign journalists that may or may not even get the movie.
Yeah. Punisher good in this movie.
Right, yeah.
Butterfly nice.
Right. Who all of which I can tell already are like, their first thing is this isn't a horror movie. And it's going to be marketed as a horror film to the horror fans who are already really tough on any horror movie released wide, and who are going to show up and find out this isn't a horror movie. Weird. I'm bracing for like significant backlash, but then I think there are going to be people who see it either with different expectations or none at all, who are going to love it.
Yeah.
And like my mother would love this movie.
Yeah, it's cool though.
But I like good luck trying to get my mom to sit through Hush,
Yeah.
So it's a weird little unique movie that I'm very proud of that's just been through hell, and like it's great that it's coming out, but I'm assuming it's coming out. I'm still I'm not even embarrassed anymore to be like I'm skeptical of relativity.
Well, talking about marketing, is there a different way to advertise a movie? Because obviously horror is the genre that sells, but is there a different way you could put a spin in there? This is a drama that just happens to have some fantastical elements.
I pitched him on supernatural drama as a good way to do it, or leaning into fantasy, or trying to market it as like this is essentially a bedtime story.
Yeah, that's how the trailer felt.
Yeah. But they've and the trailer actually is not as straight horror as it could be. Like they definitely have moments in the first half.
Falsely. I mean, I haven't seen the film, but it felt like it was a drama.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is, and it is. I mean, the number one thing you can point to is drama.
Yeah,
and it has some horror elements for sure, especially in the third act. Mm-hmm. But if you're there for the horror elements, it's just not that movie.
Yeah. So it's weird. You got this weird cluster, not purposely, but you have this total cluster of your work.
Yeah.
Because that's coming
it's
out.
It's a bizarre year for me.
Hush, absolutely. I mean, I haven't met, and this is completely genuinely, I have not met a person who hasn't been positive about Hush that I've met. Every time I've recommended it to someone, even if it wasn't their favorite film, they all think, like, on a technical level, they all, like, think it's A+. Which is really pretty awesome,
No,
movie.
I'm floored by the reception that movie got. Because it was, of all of them, it was the tiniest.
Where did you guys shoot that one?
Alabama. All of them. We did Oculus, Somnia, and Hush in Alabama.
And what's the reason for that? Tax shelter?
It started as, there's a great tax rebate in the state, but then, my crew that we hired locally for the most part for Oculus, they've been on all the movies now.
Huh.
Oh, that's great.
And so like I've got a whole like other family in Alabama, and I've actually spent an extraordinary amount of time there in the last 3 years. But yeah, so it's funny because there's a thing, you never really want to actively repeat yourself if you can help it, and I really love the idea of trying to do different kinds of movies. So there's something that, it's kind of a double-edged sword where it's like if you really loved Oculus, Hush is very different. If you really loved Hush, Before I Wake is very different, And if Before I Wake is your bag, Ouija 2 probably isn't. So it's like, they're all different. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
But you had the same writing partner for a couple of them, but Hush is written by the lead actress, Katie Siegel, is that right?
Kate Siegel.
Siegel. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking of the actress from...
Married with Children?
Hey, Peg. Oh, we did that a lot. We did that a lot on set,
but
actually.
This is really cool. This is one of those cool cases where I saw someone in a movie, hadn't seen before in a movie. She's been in movies, but I hadn't personally seen her. So it was like seeing someone first time, super confident performance, super great movie, and then the credits, it's like written by, you're like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Mm-hmm. So what was the creative collaboration on the writing of this and knowing that this person would be the star?
Yeah, it was, we were out to dinner, and this was after, this would have been in, 2014, I guess. So this was, we must have shot Before I Wake in 2013. We must have, now that I'm thinking it through. Because, it was fall 2014. Before I Wake was already, like, in its turnaround hell. And we were out to dinner talking about movies we wanted to make, and, Kate was in Oculus. Just most people don't recognize her. She was the ghost.
Okay.
With the glassy mirror eyes. So she didn't really talk. And was only there for a minute or two.
Yeah.
But that was Kate. And she was talking about her love for Wait Until Dark, which I share. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about having always wanted to do a movie without dialogue. Mm-hmm. And by the time dessert came at that dinner, we had the basic structure for it. And so while Before I Wake was kind of, suffering through, we went off, and this was it's like we'd just done this very expensive genre movie, and it was like, let's go do one for nothing. Like, let's go just pack up, kind of like you said, because there isn't a movie star at the front. let's go be experimental. And it was Trevor Macy again and Jason Blum who were like, yeah, you guys want to go do that movie? That sounds like it's an experiment, and it could go one way or another. Could be great, could be terrible. So don't make it too expensive, because it's a risk. And the more budget you have, the less risk you're actually able to take. And
what was the budget at, like, roughly?
$1 million.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a beautiful place to take a chance, you know?
We could do whatever we wanted at $1 million. And it was like, Kate's going to star? Great. No dialogue? Great. You know?
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, no one's really going to be in trouble.
Did you ever actually try to do it without any dialogue?
We talked about it.
Like early on,
it didn't quite work.
Yeah. You need to care about that.
Yeah,
I think
you got to have an intro where you kind of explain everything.
Yeah, it's too hard to get exposition out. We got a good amount of it out without dialogue, but some of it you just have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been like, we can accomplish it, but we're going to be here for an hour.
Yeah.
Before we can start.
And I want to talk as spoiler-free about this one, because part of the reason I really like the idea of you coming on right now was because I feel like we wanted to give Hush as good a push for those who haven't yet watched it.
Yeah,
who
they
listen
can
to our
just
show,
jump on
because it's an excellent film.
Yeah, on Netflix right now.
Yeah, I'm curious. So she.
I mean, you didn't mention that. I don't think it's a secret that she is your spouse.
Yeah, she's my wife.
So,
that was a secret from me.
Yeah, she wasn't though. While that was happening, we got married just this past February.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so we got married right before the movie premiered at South by.
Wow.
But yeah, no, we were dating but not engaged when we shot the movie. And we kind of knew going in that it was like, this is going to do one of two things for us on a personal level. Like, we're either coming out of this married and inseparable forever, or this is going to rip us to pieces.
How hard is it during the actual process to be around a person and needing stuff from them?
Becca can speak about this, and she works with her husband on everything.
Yeah, but I think an actor-director relationship's totally different than a collaborator.
Yeah, I mean, Dave and I...
that's a sympathetic relationship you need to create.
I think if I was directing him, I think he'd kill me. But because, like, we tend, like... Even now, because Dave writes a lot for the site, because he's, like, a total history buff, so whenever I'm like, I need something about this sinking ship from 1800s, Dave's like, I'll do it. I'll research it tomorrow. Yeah, and he's totally on it. And even just me as an editor being like, okay, you didn't use the Oxford comma here, and I don't like this word. I'm changing it. He's very kind of like
wants to kill you.
Sure.
Yeah. But like when we're directing together, because we love to direct together, that actually, but I think it's because we met doing that. We met directing together in college. And so we've always directed together.
Yeah. It's like, that's a dynamic you guys are already well schooled at. That's a language you guys know. So that's great.
Yeah, we directed Hair together my sophomore year of college, and we met like a couple of weeks prior to that.
Did you do it like full nude, or
yeah,
the directing part? I mean,
no, we were clothed. So but there was definitely naked people on the stage. But
wow. So. Yeah, I did a number. I was in musical theater in high school, and we did Hair. We just did the title song.
How did you do that in a high school?
Clothed,
just
clothed.
the title song.
Yeah, just the title song.
Because every other song in the musical is about race or getting naked or having sex or orgies or drugs. There's a song where they just list drug names off for the entire song. That's crazy that you guys got to do that.
We couldn't come near that. They
so you just got Aquarius.
It would be neat for us to have like long hair.
Oh, you got the gimme head with
hair, long beautiful hair.
Yeah. So for the up and coming directors listening, how do you?
They never let me go musical theater.
No,
they never.
Oh, that was my minor.
None of that.
Yeah.
But I think probably they were wondering, like, so how does couch casting work? Because you've been successful at it, clearly. So
that's debatable.
Right.
It's funny because Kate and I, we met in the actor-director dynamic as well. Like she was already in Oculus, know, and I had seen her. I met Kate because she auditioned for another movie of mine, and I thought she was great. I had seen her in a stage production in LA. I thought she was great. So initially it just started as I really want to work with her.
Yeah.
And then as the years went on, that kind of it grew into something else, but that was always separate from work. Like it was after Oculus, and obviously, and like kind of in this whole other bubble. And when it came time to like, there was a sense of if we do this together, it could be either like great or like disastrous. But because there was never any kind of discussion of anyone else playing the lead, like because we were going to create it together from scratch, it really, it never felt like we were kind of, in any other dynamic other than director and actor.
And you both know the stakes. Like, you both know that this is all or nothing, right, with the film, so you're going to give everything you have, and she understands you need to do that, and you understand she needs to, and I think that's kind of neat.
Well, and it was neat because, well, as we got to write it, which is where it was really fun, you know, and when you're co-writing a movie without dialogue, really, the writing process looked like we would come home from our various days. We lived together in this house in Glendale with a big sliding glass door in the front, and it was like, okay, I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to walk around and try to figure out how to get in here.
Yeah.
And you're going to stay in here,
That's cool.
and you're going to look around and try to figure out what you would do. And if any kind of little scenario that we come up with feels real to both of us, let's write it down. And that's how we figured out the movie. It was our neighbors must have thought. Like,
you had OCD. It's like, walk around the house toy. Walk around the house toy.
Keep breaking into his house.
Yeah, it's like this. You know, our neighbors are cool, but they've got some weird role play thing going on over there.
Those guys just read Gerald's Game.
Yeah, exactly. And so like the writing process there was pretty fun because it's like we got to kind of play it together, and then when we finally had our first draft and it was like time to go off and like polish it into a script, we just got the hell out of town. So it's like, we're going to take a vacation. Went to the Stanley Hotel.
Oh, cool.
Yep. We got into room 217.
Oh.
I know. I stayed in 217, and we finished the script over the weekend sitting at the bar at the Stanley Hotel.
Oh, cool.
And it was like, we would have done this anyway.
Yeah.
Only now we have something like that we have to do while we're here. So this is a blast. So yeah, it was... It turned out to be a phenomenal kind of collaboration, and we're eager to do it more.
Yeah.
Which is great because I was nervous. I think she was too. That we'd come out of it the other way.
Does it make you want to do those little like $1 million experiments in between bigger projects?
They're a great like palate cleanser.
Yeah, I was going to say, do they like reset your brain and remind you
totally
how films are made without all the expensive stuff and the good catering?
There's something kind of pure about it, and it forces you to be really creative too because you just don't have safety nets, and so to come off of Before I Wake, which is such a long shoot and a very long post.
What was the budget on Before I Wake?
12.
12. Oh my gosh.
Which is a bizarre number.
To go from 12. Yeah, honestly, films like, well, you can speak to this. Films don't get made for $12 million now.
No. Anything over 5 is crazy.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to be 40. Like, unless it's like, okay, I'm doing Crimson Peak.
Yeah, that's definitely become a thing in the industry where there's either really low, it's $1 million, or it's $40 million.
Right.
And there's very little in between.
Very little.
Were you a slasher fan?
Not so much. It wasn't my favorite, and that was kind of why I was excited about this. Was it took the elements I liked about it because it's like the slasher movies for me. Like I love the original Halloween. I'm not a Friday the 13th fan. It was just never my franchise. I like character work, and so I don't like movies where it's like you got a bunch of archetypes and you're just eliminating them. That doesn't really do much for me as a viewer. So a lot of the slashers, unless I was watching them for fun and beer and blood, which also definitely has its place.
Yeah. There aren't many that. I mean, Alice, Sweet Alice. There's a couple that are a little bit more character centric, but most are about numbers, right?
Right.
They're mostly about buddy counts and a certain pattern,
right?
Yeah.
Or unless it's like Scream or Final Girls, where it's like, oh, this is brilliant. But
they're all meta and focusing on the archetypes of the genre, the tropes that make it. So
certainly,
yeah.
So yeah, it's not where I typically gravitate, and so for me, like I didn't even really look at this as a slasher film. And the movie that we talked about the most when we were writing was actually Die Hard.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, we have our Hans Gruber scene, where he pretends to be Bill Clay. We've got that whole bit.
Yeah.
We've got pretty much, she's McClaning it up in there. Down to the limp to the finish, and we really. I looked at it more like an action film.
Yeah, when it has got a lot of action. So, did you? The only thing I really wanted to know, and I like not knowing, so it'll probably be a benefit. But the thing I personally want to know is, did you create a backstory for the killer so he knew why he had just wandered into that space, or did you let him discover that?
Yeah, we did. We John Gallagher and I created one together in rehearsals before we started. It was important to both of us that he know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
but we didn't want to put it in the movie. Yeah. Like we both kind of talked about it for a minute, but we couldn't figure out who he'd share it with.
Right.
Organically in the film.
Right.
It's like at what point would he kind of come up to her and Be like, can you read my lips? Because I've got a lot of exposition.
But you have a visual hint in your film.
Yeah, there are a couple.
There's a visual hint of the markings on his thing.
The markings on the crossbow.
Numbers.
Yeah.
But there isn't still any. It's like Michael Myers. We don't know why the evil.
Right.
And it's the thing that Bret Easton Ellis on his podcast always rages about is answering things in movies.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I thought the one scene with the boyfriend of the girl next door, I thought that told more than enough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hints in there. Yeah.
But you watch what he says and their interaction in that scene, I feel like you get a lot. You're like, oh, I know who this guy is. Well, at least that's how I felt.
We completely agree. And for Gallagher, he was like, the minute I say the word jock, you know, when he calls the neighbor, he's like, oh, he's like you. He's like a jock.
Exactly.
You know,
Can we reveal it on there? No, not you reveal it. Can I tell them what I know?
Sure.
I didn't share this with you guys before. There's one of the characters from Your Next who was meant to be part of the siege was late. He didn't show up. The house on the other side of Larry Fessenden house is this house. This film takes place at the same fucking time, guys.
This is
ready to blow me up. He got the wrong address. Motherfucker just walked into the wrong.
But he got the memo about the crossbow.
He got the well. That was his brother, his twin brother.
He got the text that was like
Simon Barrett's character, and the other is, and this is why it's all connected.
Wow,
I love that.
Oh,
blew
wow.
my mind.
Yeah, crossing of
bill.
universes.
That
Is crazy.
That's what I do.
Elric has dozens of these pitches, like ready to go.
Well,
All crossovers.
there's one specific Hush thing I wanted to ask about because I do love the film as is, but the one it's like, and I mean this comes from you as a viewer. Like you watch a movie and I think you see the story unfold and you think to yourself, you know what, I love that, but I wish this happened or that happened or whatever. To me, it's like you watch a movie that's traditionally like a slasher, and I thought he was super creepy with the mask on. Mm-hmm. So the debate, whether you've seen it or not, is that at some point he does obviously remove the mask.
Right.
So was this something that was conscious that you talked about? Because I felt that he took it off a little earlier than I would have liked to have seen. And then part of me is like, oh, I wish he put the mask back on at some point. But then it's like
somebody else argued with that. Took the other side. I remember
for him to put the mask on again. Like obviously, I always argue with myself about it.
Right.
It was a very good.
Let's talk about the mask and why it is the way it is in the movie.
Well, I love the design of the mask, which was we wanted to do. You always nod at your favorites. It's like we wanted to do that Michael Myers thing where it's blank.
Yeah.
And it's actually got a little smile. Like it's kind of like hi.
So it's Chekhov.
Yeah,
but painted.
Yeah,
you needed one of the lesser Star Trek characters.
It's exactly
close enough to smell them, sir.
That's the guy. Yes, indeed. No, it was the mask was designed by this guy Bruce Larson, who designed the mirror, and Oculus designed our main creature in Before I Wake. Like he's part of my Alabama family, and so, like, we had come up with this idea for it. It was always the mask always came off at the same point in the script, which to me was like, if I'm in this situation, and when we would kind of role play this at home, although we did it without the mask, thank God for our neighbors. Like,
God, they're just weird
they're just
now.
Weird people.
Cut masks out.
But there was this thing of like, okay, if you wear a mask and you're a serial killer, there's a reason to wear it, and it's mostly because you need to protect your identity to a certain extent, and while you're doing it, instill a sense of fear in the victim, right? And this guy gets off on scaring someone more than anything else, but he gets off on scaring Maddie more than anyone else, not the viewer, So by the time we get to the point where it's time for him to take it off, and we kept it on as long as I thought we could, given the story, because as long as she could hold on to the idea that I haven't seen your face, she doesn't yet know he's killed anyone. He's just a guy that was creepily around her house, She didn't even see his face. That is hope for her. As long as those things are true, one of them, both of them, rather, can walk away from it. And it's the first thing that, Kate would find herself wanting to say when we were kind of going through the writing. It was just like, I don't know who you are. As far as I'm concerned, you've done nothing but kind of walk around my house. Just go. You're fine.
Yeah.
And so what happens in rapid succession there is she says, please leave. I have hope that I'm going to survive because I haven't seen your face. So the first thing he does is remove the hope. And his ordinary, just normal human, not scarred up, crazy mutant face, in that moment for her, the idea that now she's seen it and not, like one of them has to die, that's scarier for her than the mask was.
And that's your stakes raise there. Like,
Yep. It completely escalates the stakes. It states his intentions very clearly. And at that point, he's all in.
Yeah.
Like, he has to kill her at that point.
And I didn't know until only a couple weeks ago. I didn't know when I watched it, and I'd just seen Cloverfield Lane. I had no idea it's the other guy, the main guy from, and he's great in Cloverfield Lane, too. So it's really cool. Very different types of characters.
Well, if you see him on the Newsroom or Short Term 12, like, he's a lovely, sweet, charming, funny guy. And so to see him, and it was really important for us when the mask came off, that it's like, this is a guy I wouldn't look twice at Trader Joe's. Like, that's who we thought was scary, not someone with a scary face. You know?
Yeah, I tweeted today that if you watch the first half of Hush and then straight away watch the first half of Cloverfield Lane's way scarier because you're like, you know that guy's bad. You're like, oh shit, get out of there.
Yeah, no, totally.
Because it's a fun connection there.
And then it's funny because the thing that happens immediately after that is she realizes that he killed her friend.
Yeah.
So it's like the two things that give her the most fear, which is what he wants, he accomplishes in about 30 seconds of each other. And like, that was, when you want to end the first act, when you talk about effective structure, we need to tear her down. And we have to eliminate that hope so that everything after that is her climbing uphill. And then you hopefully, at the end of Act 2, kind of get it all the way around again and get her right up to the brink of victory and then pull it all the way again is what we want to do.
And spoilers, you should not listen to this portion of the interview. I mean, just a little. Well, I think there's already a couple spoilers in there.
Okay.
But you shouldn't. But you do something really interesting. I won't even totally spoil it, but one of the things from anyone I've talked to, the part that really grabbed them, I actually had interestingly enough, a student who was making a short horror film, and he was asking, what he should watch, and I'd just seen Hush, and that was the film I recommended because of the kind of tension he was building. And straight away the next morning, same thing said by a few people, which is the moment where we see a possibility of her future.
Yeah.
Because she's a writer. And it was genius because even though I know she's a writer, and later it's fine because you get over it, where you might not in a different kind of movie. You might get pissed off. But because she's a writer and she talks about her thing with endings, it was a really effective. And in that moment, you're like, ooh, the guts are cut out of you because you're like, Jesus Christ, like you're thinking, what kind of movie am I watching for a second? Just like the old dangerous movies of the 70s where that could happen.
Right.
It's just really smart, but I haven't heard a single. I really think that's the kind of moment in a normal film where audience might just go, fuck you and your movie.
Yeah.
Instead, everyone I know has seen it. That's actually maybe their favorite, the moment where they're like all in.
That was the most controversial scene of the script. And it was funny because that was the one where it was like, I don't know that we can do that. And the producers were nervous about it, too, for that reason. They were like, this is either going to be great or it's going to knock people out of the movie.
Yeah.
And so they said, please have a backup plan when you get down there to shoot. Because we were shooting the movie in order, which you also almost never get to do.
Yeah.
We're kind of forced to. And that ended up being awesome.
You can tell.
By the time we got there, it was like, please have a backup plan in case this doesn't work. And we didn't have time. And so we were down in Alabama in the woods in the middle of the night, and we just made the call that it was like, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But rather than put energy that we don't have and spend hours that we don't have into an ending or a sequence like that we don't like, let's just go for it. And when we tested the movie, that was, for the test audience, that was their favorite scene.
Yeah, it's a great sign. It just means you did it truthful to the earlier scenes. In terms of the new stuff, I mean, the stuff that you guys know a little bit about more because you've been working, but, just in summary, what you can tell us about things like the sequel to Ouija,
right?
Which you're out there, any of the adaptations that you're listed to, any of the stuff that you can tell us, because like I said, there's this real cluster of all the work coming out at the same time.
Ouija 2 pick up where Ouija 1 left
I haven't
off,
seen Ouija 1 yet. So
I've seen it. But are we getting a whole completely new universe, or does it kind of continue on with that?
It's pretty much its own thing. I wasn't a big fan necessarily of the first movie.
Many people weren't.
But
it was financially quite lucrative.
Yeah. It grossed more than 2 Oculuses, as I like to say.
That one was kind of a shock to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it might be limited to the horror movie, because then as soon as I'm like, most people didn't dig it. As soon as I log onto our website and we post something about it, everybody's like, oh my God, I loved Ouija. Okay.
It was like 220 abstentions, apparently.
Yeah, oh my God. At
Which
least
is stellar.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it did an extraordinary amount of business. Yeah. And that was kind of what was so surprising to me when they came to me for it. It was like, why would you come? Why would you want me to do it? Like, it's not the kind of movie I make, meaning the first one. The second one very much is the kind of movie I make. And the difference was, like, Jason Blum was like, look, I'm glad the first movie did really well. Everybody is. But it was made by committee, in a lot of ways, because it wasn't a project we controlled. And there were so many cooks in the kitchen, like the movie went the way those big movies go. And he was like, look, what I want to do for the sequel is, I want to take a filmmaker with a point of view and just say, do what you want to do.
That's so awesome. That as a producer doing that.
Oh, it's insane. It's kind of
it's like the 70s. Yeah, it's like it's like easy ride to time.
And with a sequel in particular, because the thing about a sequel is you've got these expectations of the studio, which is how the movie will perform, and you have these expectations from the audience based on the first movie. And in this movie's case, bizarrely, the studio expectations are very high because it did like 105 million worldwide, and the audience expectations are very low.
Yeah,
because nobody really liked it. So it's this weird animal.
But you'll have to get some of those in, like people like us who wouldn't. I wouldn't go to the second one,
right?
Except now I would because of you. But the first one I still haven't seen. I'm actually going to watch it now because I'm kind of just genuinely curious. But yeah, well I know.
I'm intrigued to see what you think.
But you now have that weird reversal where you have to win those people in. Yeah. And hope that the other people come back and are pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because what we kind of found was that even the people that really liked the first movie didn't remember it very well. And so it was clear early on that we could do it kind of our own thing. And that's what drew me to it. Was I kept waiting to be stopped, actually. It was like, do what you want. It was like, really? Okay. Well, I'm going to do this. Like expecting someone's going to tackle me and I'm going to get fired and that'll be that. But it just kept working. Like they true to their word, like everybody at Blumhouse protected the movie all the way through because they didn't want to make just a cynical sequel to a movie that wasn't really well received by audiences and critics, even though it performed well financially. Like that wasn't their goal. And they were like, look, we have this chance. We were guaranteed a big, fat, wide release. Let's make a good movie. And let's try to correct some of the problems that happened with the first one. So I'm
Witchboard
really
fan? Are you a Kevin Tenney Witchboard fan, or had you not seen this film?
Oh my God, Witchboard?
Yeah,
wow.
Witchboard 1 and 2.
Good grief.
Johnny Catane, baby.
Yeah.
Witchboard 1, I've always loved that.
It was such a good movie.
I like 2 as well.
So long.
No, Witchboard
Oh, so you didn't you didn't watch it? You didn't copy it shot for shot for you too? What is wrong with you?
I know.
Okay, so no one can accuse you of that.
Did
Fraggle
you
Rock.
have a funky psychic in there? Or?
That was the other thing. I wanted no funky psychics.
No funky psychics.
Yeah, I had a list of
Insidious
things I
already had
didn't
the corner
want.
on that.
Well, it was like I was like I didn't want to do a movie about teenagers.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, so it's not a teen film.
Wait.
No.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
you just completely blew the.
There's one teenager in it, Annalise Basso from Oculus, who's now 16.
Oh,
played
cool.
young Karen
So
Gillan.
I just assumed it would be another teen.
Yeah,
film.
I
Cool.
assumed it was a group of teens find a Ouija and get
No, it's
possessed.
her,
and...
Henry Thomas from E.T.
Hey, yeah, Henry.
All right.
Elizabeth Reeser from Mad Men and Twilight movies, I think. And then this little girl, Lulu Wilson, who's the best child actor I've met since Jacob Tremblay.
Huh.
But yeah, so it's a whole kind of different ballgame, and I can't get into too many specifics on it, but aesthetically, I got to do stuff that I've never gotten to do before because it's not even. I really can't say. I don't know what I'm allowed to say.
Is it a summer movie? Is it coming out in summer? Or
Comes out October 21st.
Oh, cool. So it's right around Halloween.
Halloween.
Perfect.
Yep. Yeah, right around Halloween, which is I
Exciting.
think how they did the first one too, and it's like right before Halloween to kind of cash in on that.
And no one ever does
excitement for
that.
it.
It's the biggest baffling thing in horror will always be why the horror films are never released in that period.
Right? It's like,
It's
let's
just
put it out in
so
August.
bizarre.
It makes no sense.
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
like I want all of it at Halloween. I want
Yeah.
Conjuring 2. I
No
want
matter
all of
what
it on
it is.
Halloween.
I think that's why
I'll go
there
see it.
is a saturation in
Yeah, but there
Halloween.
isn't. There never
There
is good
isn't.
stuff.
No,
ever.
but they always
Nothing came out last
assume there's
October.
going to be.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think last October, for a while, Saw owned Halloween, and then for a while,
Yeah.
Paranormal Activity owned Halloween, and nobody wanted to go up against those.
Yeah.
And
But
so,
now,
yeah,
I'm ready.
Yeah, no,
Give me
I'm-
horror in October.
yeah.
I'm going to watch Ouija this week. And I'm going to report back. God damn it.
It's you won't need to remember much.
That's cool.
Yeah.
For the-
No, but that's
the-
exciting. Well, I'm just excited, and I want our listeners to know that this is your film.
Yeah.
Like a film
Yeah.
you're proud of and you achieved.
No,
what
totally.
you-
Well, I think what's
which
going to happen
exciting.
is the trailer is going to break with I think The Purge.
Oh, cool.
In July, and once I think people see the trailer,
We'll know what's
it'll be
up.
pretty clear.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Rob definitely has to lead this one because he just put himself through
What'd I
watching
do?
the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies. And I don't know if
yeah.
you're even, I don't, if this is something you can't do, but I know you and your writing partner from the previous films at one point were.
Oh, we wrote it. Yeah,
wrote it?
we wrote it for Sony.
I know what you did last summer.
A
Yeah.
remake?
Yeah.
Get out of here. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
It was on IMDb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even looked
Holy
at it.
smokes.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought maybe that was why you had watched them.
No, it was just random.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
they-
wow.
Watch them
the
again.
remake that was like 2
Well,
years
Rob,
ago.
take it away.
Wow.
What do you want to know?
I don't.
Fisherman?
What
Zombie?
what-
Yes, no?
What
I
happened
don't
to
know.
it?
Well, it's going fine. I mean, they're going to make it. So
But not you. You're not making it.
I'm not directing that one.
Yeah,
it's not really that. Yeah, it's not really. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
Same
for me to do it.
studio who did the original?
Yeah, it's Neil Moritz
Uh-huh.
and Sony
And Freddie Prinze Jr. is
Eric
the fisherman now.
yeah,
fisherman, yeah.
he's graduated.
Spoiler.
To fisherman.
Sorry, spoiler.
No, that one. It's another example of it's a whole new deal,
Right.
And,
Because there's an original book that you're...
Yeah,
It's
well, yeah,
Lois
adult novel.
Duncan. Yeah, I read it when I was a kid.
Yes, I've not read it.
So how do you find... So a project like that could be
Yeah.
kind of mediocre, and when somebody says, do you want to remake a film like I know...
Right.
How do you get that hook for yourself?
Well,
to get yourself interested in that?
Well, it was funny. It's another one where I wasn't interested at first, and they called up my agents and they said, we're going to reboot this. We'd love to talk because they had liked Oculus, and we'd love to talk to Mike and Jeff about doing it. And we initially passed, and then they said, no, please, we have some things that we think might be interesting, and we finally kind of agreed to go hear them out. And they said, so this is the kind of movie that we want to make. Like, we have this franchise, we have this title, but we're not interested in just doing this same thing again about the eliminated teenagers and the fishermen and everything like that. Because
So
the
this time
fisherman's
she'll
not
take
even
her shirt
from the
off.
original book. Yes, this time it's nothing.
Everyone
but
will
boobs.
be happy.
But so they were like, all these elements that you associate with the original franchise, not only aren't they present in the book, like the fisherman's an invention of that movie.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I didn't know that either.
Which is
Yeah.
why I had, when you told me it was based off a book, I had no idea because
Yeah.
I read the book in like 5th grade, and
Yeah.
it's not even like there's no fishermen. It's
No.
not even set in like a wharf town. It's
Yeah.
just
No, it's a morality
just
play.
teens.
Yeah. And it's like, and we had looked at that a little, but we also.
So in the book, what had they done? Was it run over someone in the actual book? Do you know?
I haven't read that.
Oh, okay.
I think they did run over someone.
it was
and
somebody
it
with
was
a
the
car.
same. Yeah, and it's like
same concept.
the twist in the book was more about like a character who's part of the group
doing it.
turns out to be
Yeah.
doing it, and it's like it's very Christopher Pikey kind of that
Who
way.
I also mentioned last
Scream.
time.
Yeah,
I was
Scream.
like, Christopher Pike and Lois Duncan
Love
owned my
Christopher Pike.
childhood. That Chain Letter, why isn't that a movie?
Chain Letter?
I've been wondering that.
I
for
wrote
while.
a very illegal adaptation of The Midnight Club
Oh my
in
God,
college that I
such a
really
good
wanted
book.
to make, and until I sent it to Christopher Pike, and his people said, "Please do not adapt his work without our permission."
Lois Duncan.
So, yeah,
I've been asked before, like, what's the one book that I would want to do? And I always say, we've always lived in the castle, but number 2 would be Lois Duncan's Stranger with My Face.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing. So highly recommend that one.
Well, we turned in our script. They loved it over there, and we loved doing it. And it was another one where I was just like, wow, if this actually goes, I'm going to have a lot of kind of angry, I Know What You Did Last Summer fans. On the other hand, it's a really neat take.
They're dying out. The 90s kids are all dying out.
Well,
They're
was-
all
They're
heroin
dying.
addicts on the
Yeah.
streets, those kids.
It was
No one does heroin anymore, Elric.
Actually, it's coming back in a big way.
I was going
I
to say
know.
Oxy, but
You can't do worse than 2. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
well, apparently
open-minded.
3 is zombies.
It's hard to make
that-
karaoke scary, but they tried. But yeah, so that one's done, and
Would that be a biggish film, you think?
it'd be
from
pretty
your-
big. Yeah,
Yeah, with that title, I would think it'd have to be.
I would expect them to try to do it in like the 15 to 20 kind of range.
Okay.
Like it would be a pretty big deal movie.
Yeah.
But that was a blast to work on. And then the big one that I've been pushing uphill now for a year and a half, maybe longer, is my long gestating adaptation of Stephen King's Gerald's Game. Which I got permission to do after Oculus came out, and
He
King
loved
was-
it. I remember his early
Yeah.
tweets on that. He was a big fan.
He
for
was
his early review.
And as a lifelong King fan, like I had a difficult
ridiculous.
time talking for days
Yeah.
after that.
Did you talk to him personally?
No, I've never talked to him
yet.
personally. I don't know what I would say. It would just he'd get on the line and I'd be like squeak, like it would be sad. But I've never gotten to talk to him personally yet. I hope maybe that changes if we move forward.
Shoot
on
it
the
in
movie.
Maine.
Yeah,
Get all your Alabama friends to.
Oh, I would totally
Hit
drag
Maine.
him up there for it. The rub with Gerald's Game is, if you've read the book.
I haven't read the book. I know what the premise is, and I want to read.
Well,
the
even the premise
It's- yeah, the
lets you
kinky-
know that
yeah.
it's like, a woman and her husband go to their lake house miles from anywhere to kind of spice up their love life. He handcuffs her to a bed. He promptly dies of a heart attack. And the book is her handcuffed to the bed for days.
Yeah.
So it's 127 hours meets gravity.
The guy
in the
making
bedroom.
Hush, that should be good.
Well, but it's I mean, when you talk about minimalism,
yeah.
This is a challenge. Like when I first read the book, I thought it was unfilmable. And it took me 10 years to find a structure that I was like, this will work. And so Jeff and I wrote the script. King loved the script. And we were all set to go. It's been just a nightmare to try to get it up off the ground because I can't get people past this idea that it's a movie about a woman handcuffed to a bed. And it's like,
what about doing a different kind of financial model like a Hush where it's a lower budget? Could you do it at that kind of range?
I can't do it as low as Hush, mostly because we've got to pay Stephen King,
of course.
But what's interesting is that Hush, I thought the project was in danger of like total stagnation for a while. And Hush really kind of shook it awake again because King loved Hush.
Yeah.
And Netflix loved Hush. Like, Netflix loved the way it was performing. And so Netflix showed up and they were like, we have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of movies. Yeah. And what we like to do is take risks on movies. It doesn't matter to us if you don't think you can get the movie into multiplexes. Hush worked. We've got you and Stephen King. Like maybe we want to do it at a price point that a studio wouldn't.
I love this. I love these new models opening up.
This is like a great new model.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's happening, and I don't want to
put the cart
before the horse. Yeah. But the project is alive again because of that, and so we're having those conversations. If it it takes so many kind of consecutive miracles for any movie to come together. If that one comes together, I'll be thrilled because that's my favorite of them, and I think it's the most ambitious project of them all, kind of by a mile. So
if you could have done anything by King besides that, even the ones that were already movies, of all his things that were out there, was there saying that just off the top of your head, like, I would have loved to have tried my hand at?
Oh, I was desperate for it. Yeah. And when I heard that Carrie had left it, I was like, oh, please get me in that room. Because I don't think I was like, look, as a calling card piece or an audition piece for it, I've got Oculus. I've got a braided timeline. Totally. Like, let me expand on that. I never got in the room.
Has that been sealed, though? I thought it was still kind of up in the air.
No, I forget who's doing it.
Oh, it did get sealed up after you left?
It's
you look that
who
one
did
up?
Mama.
Yeah, they did Mama.
Yeah.
And The Impossible.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, that one's up, I think, in production.
Okay.
And then, of course, The Dark Tower, for me, is a dream project, and that's also up.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about The Dark Tower, though, is that if it works, 7 books, and my favorite is number 4.
Pace yourself. Pace yourself.
Part 4 is yours.
Part 4 is Wizard and Glass. I want it, but we'll have to see.
So if Gerald's Game takes a while to come to fruition, do you have smaller original scripts that you're working on in the meantime?
Yeah, the beauty of not having a career in this business for so long is that I've got a pile of stuff. Yeah. It's like for 12 years I was writing scripts that went nowhere that are now in a drawer that I can reach into any time. And the other kind of cool thing about it is that as more and more people see the movies, I get submitted a lot of stuff that kind of gets better and better every year. So I'm never worried about like running out of projects just because I've got a backlog of my own. But I'm kind of more into, like, I really want to do TV. I really want to try to do something outside of the horror genre, just so that I'm not only thought of as being able to do horror, even though I'll always come back to it because I love it. Yeah. But, like, I'd love to do a family film. I'd love to do, like, an Amblin-esque Goonies-style movie for my kid to watch when he grows up.
Haunted family film?
Sure,
Speaking of which, correction, I just said I'd love to see Stranger with My Face as a movie. In 2009, it was made the other place people are actually making movies. It was a Lifetime movie. In 2009, I just looked it up, so correction.
They
I
are
need
making
to see
a lot
it now.
of movies.
Yeah, we know tons of people who are working for Lifetime.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing good stuff. Are you, of your contemporaries, what work has been turning you on of late, like of people like, your same age, there's a lot of these young filmmakers. Yeah. What are some films that have just like kind of lit you up and made you want to keep?
Who do you have your eyes on that are kind of coming up?
Well, I watch everything. I was blown away by The Taking of Deborah Logan. Mm-hmm. I thought that was an incredible movie, and I really I loved. We were talking about it earlier. I loved They Look Like People.
Oh, yeah.
Which I just saw a couple weeks ago, and that really
That's on
floored me.
Netflix
That's
now.
on Netflix now.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of consume. I'm a horror fan the way everybody is. It's like the same names come up for me when I'm talking about directors I'm excited about. It's like it's going to be Wingard and Ty West. It's like I want to see what they're up to. Dave Bruckner. You know, it's like Robitel. I'm such I had this neat experience. One of the coolest things about working in this business was like I saw a Taking of Deborah Logan. I loved it. I found Adam Robitel on Facebook and was like, "Hey, I love your movie." And he was like, "I love your movie." And I was like, "We should go like have dinner." And I was like, "Okay." And now it's like we hang out now and again. Cool. And it's like that to me is really neat because it's like, you know, I still geek out when I meet other filmmakers when I admire their work. And so it's really fun for me to be like, I can just hang out in post-production at Blumhouse long enough and I'll geek out over somebody. I'll bump into somebody and be like, "Oh, hi."
Who's been the most influential, or just someone whose work you return to? Like, you know, there's so many Carpenter fans. There's so many, like, I watch Phantasm and think of Oculus for some reason and think that
Phantasm's
would be
awesome.
an influence on you. But, like, what, whose body of work meant the most, do you think?
It's I can never kind of identify somebody who meant, like, the most. But, I mean, I'm a huge Carpenter fan.
Yeah.
Huge. You know, Wes Craven, of course. You know, Clive Barker.
Yeah.
You know, I think Clive gets doesn't get the onus
because he should have made more movies. That's the thing.
More movies.
His
last
one
was
Lord of Illusions.
Lord of Illusions, which
Great
I think
movie.
you guys did a great article about recently.
Yeah.
It's a really cool movie.
Yeah, we did.
That I was
He
reading.
deserved more movies.
Yeah, no, he really did, and yeah,
World Builder, which is something you were talking about earlier. He was one of the first writers I read that I was like, World Builder. I was like, oh my God, this world is out of control.
It's surprisingly romantic.
Yeah, and I loved him because he was, like Oculus, never had a formula or a subgenre that he subscribed to. Like, he never made a particular type of film. They were all just kind of like, okay, well, it's nothing you've seen in this world, and it's otherworldly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's huge, you know? I've got an incredible admiration for Brad Anderson. Session 9 like knocked me off my chair when I saw it, and even though he kind of goes in and out of the genre, even like his episode of Masters of Horror, Sounds Like, that informed a lot of Hush for me. Was what he did with sound design. And when I saw Trans-Siberian, I was like, the guy's like stepping into Hitchcock land.
Yeah, I like that film with Ben. Is it Woody Harrelson and Ben Kingsley? Yeah, that was a good tight little thriller.
Yeah,
did he do Machinist?
He did.
Yeah.
That
all very different.
That is like borderline to horror.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's like you look at that and it's like he makes these movies that are so different, but every single movie he's made is about guilt. Every single one. The protagonist is carrying a oppressive weight of guilt the entire time. And the finale of each movie is them realizing the extent of what they've done every single time. And it's like in The Machinist, it's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
In Session 9, it's really tragic. In Sounds Like, it's horrific and ironic. And in Trans-Siberian, it's cathartic. But it's like he does the same basic arc. And he does it from a different perspective every time. And it's like, that to me is fascinating.
Had you met him before?
No, never. No. Neil Marshall is a amazing filmmaker, I think. Like The Descent, I think, is perfect.
Huge fan.
And you know, of course, Hitchcock. And but yeah, I mean, I consume pretty much everything. It's rare for me to not find some kind of value in a movie, and even if it's, you know, Troll 2 or Birdemic, you know, like I'll watch them over and Shock.
Come on, watch yourself. Watch yourself.
Because Birdemic 2 was
my daughter is a producer on that movie.
Really?
Yeah, she is a producer
Not
on
on
Birdemic 2.
Oh,
on 2?
She is a producer on it. She was like,
she's 2. How did that happen?
Hold the phone. You're talking to one of the stars of that movie. As I walk past Frame once and Birdemic, Shock and Terror 2.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I found students of mine watching like the trailer once at school, and they had no idea. And I was like, "Hey, watch this scene," and show them the part where I literally walk past, like wandering aimlessly in the museum of.
Does that make you cool to them, or
I don't
or
think
do they
so.
care at all?
No, it's
we
probably-
had,
I think it does.
We had the producer of Birdemic 2 on our show, and I was ridiculously pregnant at the time, like about to pop any moment. And he said on the show, "I'm going to give your daughter a producer credit," and he did. It popped up on her IMDb
Oh, that's
page
hilarious.
next
Even
week.
born.
That's amazing.
That tells you a lot about Birdemic 2. The problems with Birdemic, but one is
One of
pretty
the many.
special.
One of
One
the
is
many.
special.
But it's funny because I'll watch movies like that, you know, 20 times a year, and it's like, it's like sometimes I'm in the mood for the Riff Tracks version. Sometimes
High five, Mike. High five. We just made a deal for $1 million.
How long can we make that scene last?
It's so good. Yeah. Pretty remarkable.
It's my favorite still is the dude singing in the restaurant though, hanging out with my family.
Yeah,
hanging out
with
my family, having ourselves a good time. Yeah,
you guys, you're making me very miserable.
I did
right
not
now.
know that this show was going to end.
It's a non-Birdemic.
with
Look,
Birdemic.
you guys won't let me sing musicals here. I'm just stating this so that we can.
We like anti-musicals. Well, I'm excited. I mean, this has been really great for, especially so I want as many people to see Hush as they possibly can.
Yeah, if you haven't already, I mean,
check it out.
It's right on Netflix, and it's just again, it's exciting to know that you've got like a whole bunch of stuff.
You got like a slate coming up, man.
I know it's and kind of by accident. It's like 3 movies out this year.
Yeah.
Which means that no matter what happens from here on out, I will always be like disappointing myself. This kind of output.
Or it's the start of your Takeshi Miike period where you make 12 movies a year for the rest of your life. You can't even remember half of them. You're like, I don't even know what that audition film was. It's so long ago.
Yeah.
You know?
Did I do that one?
Yeah.
I thought that was Wingard.
Well, I'm excited mostly now. I'm excited to see OUIJI too.
Yeah,
because
I am too.
I love this idea that somebody just gives you carte blanche on something creatively and
doesn't tell you that you have to adhere to the first one or what worked about the first one or anything like that.
And I don't want people to think like they're going to go into it and it's going to be like Cube or something. Like it's
He
still,
told us this is full
I
on
really want
Poltergeist.
you to make Cube now.
I know it's like it's still you still go into it knowing that the movie's for a big audience, so it's like
stop lowering expectations.
Because I always feel like it's like the expectations are so beautifully low right now, and the more I talk, the more I build them up.
Well,
it's
the
like, why would I
trailer.
do
We'll let
that
the
to
trailer
myself?
do it.
Yeah.
The trailer, yeah. I know what you did last summer. My mind is still blown about that. But anyway, we're all excited about all of it, and we appreciate you coming and giving us so much of your time and kind of it was great to get to know you through your movies and your stories about them.
Thank you so much for having me. This has just been a blast.
And also on a personal, I would say I would encourage people to revisit Oculus. Honestly, I think that's a movie.
I'd even say Absentia.
I think it's in a movie on par with The Witch and on par with It Falls. It's one of those movies I think will be around for a long time, and it is one of those ones that will probably grow because I think it is complex. I think it's not the easiest movie first viewing. I think,
I love that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thanks for making it. and we'll post the short so people can actually see it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming by, and we will see you guys all next week.
Yeah.